Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the fiscal 2020 capital improvement plan presentations. This morning, what I plan to do is first of all introduce the members of the committee. Just want to go through. I'll start left to right. Sue, you want to start?
Sue Dring, I'm the chairman of the advisory committee.
Amy Burdos, the superintendent of schools.
Bill Keegan, town manager.
Roger Hill, DPW director.
David Feldman, Board of Selectmen.
Chris Laviolette, consultant to the Finance Director's Office.
So I just want to say that this is this morning we'll go through a set of hearings starting at 8 o'clock and going all the way till about, and we plan to be here till about 1, and sooner if things go quickly. We have a number of hearings that will be coming in this morning, and folks will be appearing before us to request their various capital improvement items. So we will then, what we will do is go through the various hearings, and then what we will do is go through the funding mechanisms, the funding that we have available for these various projects. I can tell you that from the very beginning that we have more projects than we do funding, and that's pretty typical from year to year. So then we go through a process of trying to fund as many projects as we can to try and get to what we think is a good plan for the town. So with that said, I'm going to start off at 8 o'clock. The 8 o'clock hearing is Bob Cutler, the town clerk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Bob.
Hey, Bob.
So currently, we have active voting machines which were purchased in the year 2006, 2007. They have a life expectancy of about 20 years. They're actually pretty operational right now. We have one that we switched out to the spare machine because it broke the screw head and they can't really fix that. It still operates, but it's not one you want to use all the time. The machines are actually pretty good still. However, there are two companies that make voting machines for the state of Massachusetts. They're the only two that are certified. And both of them have come out with new machines. They're very good machines, a lot of bells and whistles. So because of that, LHS is the maker of the machines that we have will no longer support these within the next few years. They're not making new parts
for this machine because they're supporting the new machines. The parts that we do get, if there is a maintenance issue, is from
older machines that
they've taken back in trade when they've sold the new machines. So they started telling us that last year, so you'll see the LHS quote is from 2017. So for last year's budget, proposal, I said, it's in for the capital for this year. He says, well, it's becoming pretty critical because we're running out of parts for repair. So, whether it happens this year, next year, the year after, it's got to happen within the next few years because they just will not be supporting these older machines.
First of all, I'll start off with the first question. So, how many machines does this include, Bob?
This is, as we have a machine for each precinct, so we have 5 machines plus a spare.
Okay.
So this would be the same here.
Okay.
Plus they have boxes that they sit on that collect the ballots, so you would have to replace all of those. So we would be going with the same number that we have now.
Okay. Is it possible to replace a few of them as opposed to all of them? Does it make sense to do that?
I don't think it makes sense to. It's a couple different technologies. You'd have to program 2 different types of machines. There may be different costs for that as well. So I think $1,000 toward the bottom of the proposal. I just got the ES&S the other day. They would not be taking those because they're a different company and they're different machines, so there would be no trade-in if we went with the ES&S product. So, I hadn't pushed earlier anyways because the machines were fairly new. They were working out bugs over the last couple of years. I'm actually going to a training on the ES&S product that I haven't seen theirs yet. They're pretty similar, but each has its own benefits.
We're having some technical difficulties with the broadcast, but they're working on it, so. I think they're back now, but it's, people are texting me. So, sorry about that.
So Bob, if you lose one of the, you got one that you can't use very much anyway, right?
Yeah, that's,
If you
wouldn't
lose,
want to use that all the time.
if you lose another machine and you can't, you know you can't repair it or get parts for it, where does that put you?
So, they may be able to provide us with a loaner. They have, ones that they've brought back in. We had that one time, they took one of my machines out and gave me another one, and definitely had seen better days. So, they're, I'd say max, if I'd probably get 4 years out of these. Just on their own, but if they start to break down, I don't know how they're gonna be supported.
All right, any other questions?
Just, sorry.
Oh. Do these machines hook up to the internet or anything like that? Is there? Oh, okay.
That's one of the things that, there's been a lot of concern about in the election world, cybersecurity.
Right.
These, they have a function to, but they don't turn them on because they haven't come up with enough safeguards to do that. You remember we talked about the poll pads when I was in at the advisory committee. I purchased those, even though I've been waiting for them to certify. The state has not certified them still because of cybersecurity problems. So, and in fact, they're talking about there may be more companies coming in to supply these machines, but it takes the state so long to certify them. I don't know when that would happen. So.
Okay, thanks.
Very good.
So you said it's different technology, so if you bought some this year, some next year, and, you spread out the cost of the 6 over 3 years, and you still had existing machines to service your other ones, but you said it was different technology. How does that?
I don't know that you could get ballots that would work in both machines.
Okay, so ballots.
Yeah, because the state programs the ballots and they program them to the type of voting machines that you have.
Other questions?
Yeah, just one last question. So, Bob, it appears that there's a per unit cost difference. I assume that it's the additional equipment for the 5 units versus that one spare unit. So the 5 units are roughly $5,700 a piece.
Yeah.
Okay. As opposed to the $4,500 for the spare unit.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And
There's a little difference in the price with the LHS and the ES&S. And part of it is, the trade-in, so there's 3,000 off, which we're not gonna get if we go with the ES&S product.
Okay. Thank you.
this is the second year you've requested this, Bob?
Yes.
And last thing is that there was $1,200 of post-warranty fees. Is that due when you purchase, or is that afterwards?
So you have a year or two warranty depending on the product, and then after that, there's a maintenance fee. We already have maintenance fees on the current machines, so they're fairly similar, so that would already be in my budget.
So that's an operating cost at that point?
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right, so that's not to be considered as far as, so the $30,000 is the request that you have, is that?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, great.
And the ES&S is a little bit higher just because they don't give the trade value back.
I see.
But I have money in the election fund that I have, could cover the difference, so.
Other questions from the committee? All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All right, the 8:15 hearing is for recreation. We're a few minutes early, but is everybody here that's going to be here? Yep, come on.
Good morning.
Good morning.
With me is Josh Corbett from Untitled Chapter, as a source of reference if anybody has any particular questions that are more technical that I'm able to answer. Thank you for having us before CIP today. I'd like to say in my 18-plus years in my position, recreation has never come before CIP, so this is a first for me. We are here today to request $89,000 for new structures and new required surfacing at the Booth Playground. All three of our playgrounds, Booth, Payson, and Mill Street, are inspected annually, maintained, replacement of parts, and repaired using recreation funds. We plan ahead until now been able to self-fund all three playgrounds, but due to changes in laws, we cannot fully fund the non-necessary upgrades needed at the Booth. In 2018, our annual playground inspection found that the current structures at the Booth were out of compliance and needed to be removed. This was part of a third-party inspection that was done that stated all of our equipment was out of compliance, as well as the surfacing, which was a new ADA and access board regulation. The playground structures generally have a lifespan of 15 years. Our structures are at least 20 years old, so repair was not recommended due to the age and condition of the structures. Also, in the spring of 2018, the first structure to come down was the Red Castle, and that was done by our DPW. To date, has not been replaced. We are also informed that our current surfacing is non-compliant. We have a sand surfacing, which for generations has been fine, but we have been informed that it is no longer compliant, and we need to bring it up to the acceptable level, much like the IGO school has done. The cost to replace that, just the surfacing, is about $45,000, where we have to take out all of the sand, put in wood chips, and then put in a poured-in-place part. Now, I'll explain that to you in a little bit. Recreation routinely spends its own money to maintain the playgrounds at Booth, Mill Street, and Payson, and we plan to contribute to this substantially larger project as well. But the new codes requiring the new surfacing and the dilapidation of our existing surface structures is simply not something we can absorb based on the unanticipated new ADA requirements. The Booth Playground project is a need, not a want. The Booth is the hub of Foxboro activities with many user groups, be it baseball, softball, soccer, recreation programs, Moms Club, homeschooled kids. When watching a game, the playground is a safe and entertaining place for siblings of Foxboro players as well as visiting teams. It is used by Founder's Day and by the Recreation Department, and sometimes even the IGO youth students will come over and use it at recess. The residents of the community use it all year long, and I can speak to that because I'm down there all year long. That's where my office is at the Booth Playground. The playground is a non-revenue generating asset of the town. Replacing the playground structures in light of the burden of the new laws should not fall solely on the shoulders of the 1,500 families who sign up and pay for recreation programs. It should be funded primarily by the town, with every effort to obtain contributing funds from outside sources. The current playground has now been removed by the DPW, and we are looking to CIP for $89,000 to fund the new structures and the new required surfacing. We are anticipating that we can keep the cost to $89,000 with the help of our DPW department. The swing set currently on the playground will be moved as its existing playground placement is no longer in compliance, and by moving it, we are able to put it closer to a Place pathway to save some money. In addition, the local Disability Commission has been instrumental in making sure our playground will be accessible to everyone and is contributing to its construction as well. We are also anticipating being able to contribute about $20,000 from our rec budget and also outside sources such as grants and our friends groups to the project, but we're not able to provide a final figure to that as yet. With your support of $89,000 required from CIP and our ability to raise additional funds, we will be able to extend the required surfacing to a couple of the other structures which are currently not accessible. If I may, if you're not familiar with Porden Place, I just want to explain, it's a surfacing that allows for wheelchairs, people with perhaps mobility disabilities or on crutches. That is what this blue is. So if you stand at the front of the Booth Playground entrance, you would walk in and you would immediately be able to access the first component, which is just all-access swing. The Porden Place also allows you to access the, actually, I can't see it from here.
There's a belt swing in
I
there.
have to turn around. Excuse me. So you come in this way, we move the swing set so it's closer to the Porden Place pathway. We have the accessible swing here. You travel down this way, you can use a tire swing with the Porden Place in there as well. We have the Porden Place extending this way. We have two components here, but they're not necessarily handicapped accessible. And then we enter into the zone of this hub of a newly installed apparatus. What we would do with any extra monies that we would have or any extra monies that we would raise would be to extend the Porden Place to every piece of equipment, which is part of the process. That's it.
Thank you. Just a couple questions, Deborah. The request that you have that was originally submitted says $85,213. What, and you're saying you're requesting $89,000? So we have the request that we have in our sheets.
The request I had on my sheets was 89, so perhaps we'll,
Do you know where that? which is-
Sorry.
85,213, is that a different, or is it just a revised price?
it may be a revised price because Jason was able to find another discount. Yeah, I'm sorry, you are correct.
85,213?
85.
Okay, all right, very good.
So Deb, what's the rest of the surface outside of the handicap accessible part?
So all of the sand is gonna be removed, and we're gonna be putting the wood chip fibers in, which is still acceptable by ADA. However, the access board, you know how it
Can't get on
works,
it,
you know how
yeah.
it works, Amy.
I've done 2 of these, so,
They said a new decision was coming out in January and has yet to be
yeah.
either revealed or made. That's where Jason has been a great help because he's in tune with what's happening in the legislature end of it all.
So, the question I had is, when they say it's out of compliance, ADA typically kicks in if you're replacing or significantly replacing certain aspects of a building or a structure or whatever the case may be. Why are they saying that suddenly everything's out of compliance? Or is there a determination that's been made? Have you received a letter from the state that's out of compliance?
No, we have not. In doing my homework and learning about the ADA compliance regulations and also the access board, which is what's been going after recreation departments and playgrounds, is that we have been out of compliance. We needed a new playground because there was a liability with just the equipment. So we're not gonna take the equipment out, replace the equipment, and leave the non-compliant surfacing in. In the event that the access board shows up and says, we'll slap a
Can't
big
use it.
halt
Can't use it.
Can't use
sticker on you.
So what's actually in the playground right now as it
Nothing.
exists? Nothing?
It's like-
It's empty?
It's like a
Took it out.
beach.
Took it all together?
The tire swing is still there, and the swing set is still there. We have not ripped the swing set down yet.
Okay.
So you were saying before that you were anticipating like 20,000 from recreation to come forward.
Recreation and the Friends Group.
What is, and I know you said you didn't have the exact cost, but what is the idea as far as the overall cost?
Well, the 85, the adjusted 85 does pay for this. What the other costs, the other monies that we may raise or that we may be gifted, would then allow us, because we didn't put the port in place around everything, and you need to. And that would be where our costs would come in, or our monies would come in from our own
And
funds.
that is encompassing of everything that we see there?
Yes.
Okay.
So the 85,000 essentially goes to all the equipment? Is that what
And
you?
installation.
And installation.
And the port in place.
Okay, very good. To a degree, right? Only to a degree, because you say you're going to add the additional cost
Yes.
to do the whole
What you see there
area.
is the only port in place plans we have,
Okay, very good.
which are acceptable by the ADA and acceptable by the town Disability Commission, in knowing that either we will come up with the money to do more port in place, or that in a year, we might have the money to do more port in place.
So port in place is essentially like a rubberized surface? Is that what it is? Okay.
Bounded rubber.
Yeah.
Bounded
Right.
together.
What's the life expectancy of the port in place?
The warranty on it is 5 years. That's fully covered against cracking, lifting, losing adhesion. You can expect to get, between the 5 to 10 year mark out of it. It varies, but, that around 5 years, what you should try to do is plan, there's a clear binder coat you can put on the top, which gives it some life back, which wouldn't be a bad idea to put into, some kind of budget plan for the future. We didn't get into that too much, but we could talk about planning for that too.
So you're saying essentially every 5 years that should be resurfaced?
About,
roughly?
it might be 8. It depends on how much sun it gets, how much, it gets beat up. Yeah, 5 to 10 years in that range is you should look at doing some kind of maintenance on it.
And where is this, is there a lot of shade in this area, Deb, or is it,
No.
it's right in the wide
We have
open?
one big tree that Dave would like to have removed, and a couple of patches that are gonna have to come down so that they don't damage the new products.
Very good. Other questions from the committee?
Yeah, Deb, who was the third party that did the inspection?
Emmy O'Brien?
And did they issue a report?
Yes.
Be nice to see that report, so you can use that report and evaluate your other equipment in the different playgrounds, so you can anticipate.
She did.
Okay,
She did.
she did all of them?
Playgrounds, are up to code.
Okay.
We blow in new installation, a new ground surfacing every year. The top lot, the Friends Group is gonna be taking care of that. That's why it's not part of this presentation, even though it's part of the whole complex. But I'm happy to report that the other two playgrounds are in a good condition. They don't have port in place, but they're tiny playgrounds,
Right.
and they do have the wood surfacing.
Now, in the report, did they put together a capital needs, like things that you should do over the next 3, 5, 7 years?
No, they
through the
don't do
life-
that.
life
They just
expectancy?
cut and dry what's good, what's not, and not where to go from there.
Okay, good, thank you.
Other questions from the committee?
Oh, I have a question. So I can't even imagine there not being a playground there. Do you know how long there's been a playground at Booth?
I've worked here for 18 years. I went to that camp when I was a child.
Yeah.
There's always, so that's
Not very long, right?
50-some odd years. There's always, in 50 years, there's been a playground there. I would assume longer.
Yeah. And in your picture, you don't show any like benches? Are you going to have benches?
We still have
further?
all the picnic tables down there.
Oh, okay.
And an Eagle Scout project could be on the horizon for benches for the moms to sit on, so that they're closer to the structures.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
Other questions from the committee? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
So the next hearing is with the Historical Commission, Mark Forensic. Mark is here.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We can share.
All right, good morning, Mark.
Morning, Mark. From Foxboro Storm Commission. Thanks for having me here today. Right now, there are 6 cemeteries that are owned by the town. They were all formerly family cemeteries. One reason or another closed up and taken over by the town, so. Other than most of you have seen them around, it's in the center of town, the Memorial Hall, Boyd, Sherman, Lady River, Jason Morris. Starting back in January of 2016, members of our commission have documented the condition, photographed all the markers. I'm not going to make you read it all, but it was what we have, so could be up to 12. There's about 400 headstones. It's a wood stone with all kinds of various stages of repair or disrepair. So one of the big criteria when we look at these stones is we rated them on a 1 to 5 basis. 1 being excellent and 5 being poor. And you can see the distribution, there's a fair amount that are in pretty decent shape. But there's 105 that are rated 4 and 5 that are, 55 that are rated 5. So there's like 160 stones that are in pretty bad shape. Anyway, we documented them all. In fact, this last October, we contracted cemetery renovations to Jonathan Appel in Connecticut. He came out for 2 days, did some work with us, showed us how to do some cleaning. With the steps that you have to take so you don't damage the stones. He did some work, we worked with him, we straightened some out, we repaired some. Had the police come to check on us at Boyden because they heard that there were grave robbers in the area, so it was a fun time. But anyway, so basically we are able to do some of the work ourselves. Cleaning stones is not that rigorous. We worked with them, we were able to straighten some of them, but there's a lot of stones that are really tough shape. If you walk up to Center and Memorial Hall, you'll see some laying down, various states of disrepair. If you look at the picture here, you can see the kind of things that you do. In this first one, that stone was laying flat on the ground in 2 pieces. You see the big crack across. If you look at the bottom, you can see where it's already epoxied it back in, so that part is going to put on now. Got clamps here to hold the pieces together. If you look at the second picture, that's the after. So certainly on improvement of the crack is going to appear. See the triangle on the left where a piece was missing, so that was putty. Into the putty to closely match the color of the stone. So that's the kind of thing that can be done. As I said, it's about 160 that can be bad shape. Some of them are beyond salvage. They're totally shattered. But a lot of them, like this one, can really come back. So we don't really have an idea of what the total cost is going to be. But we certainly want to see the 25,000. So that's what we plan to start to try to go with. Try to get some grants, really professional grant writers, check that out. The next couple of pages, that is what's in these books. So every one of the stones in the 6 cemeteries has had one of these sheets filled out. All put into an Excel spreadsheet, so we have all the data, and then we photograph them all. This one, you can see, is broken in half. Buried. There's also a footstone. The height of that footstone, where you see that line about the middle, that's the part that you can see on the ground. So a lot of these stones, when you see them, the piece that you see is it's like an iceberg. It's like half of the stone, the other half is on the ground, so that's pretty substantial. So that's what we'd like to do. Try to get some work done on it.
Thank you, Mark. I actually have had some experience working with this in a previous experience in another community, and I appreciate the fact that you're doing this, because this is a really important thing that often gets forgotten in many communities, and but yet is a very important piece of the town's history. And so I appreciate the fact that you have taken this on, because a lot of folks have no concept or understanding of how much history is associated with these stones, and also don't know and understand the condition that they're in. And over time, you know, acid rain, things of that nature, they tend to deteriorate quite substantially. It's a big project. I mean, and I appreciate the fact that the amount of work that's gone into this, because especially we have 6 cemeteries. It's not like it's in one location, it's all over the place. And so it makes it even more difficult. How much information do you have on all the stones? Have you been able to properly identify all the stones?
Well, actually, when I say it's about 400, it's a little nebulous because you go to like the Sherman Cemetery, for instance. There's the rows of the stones, and all of a sudden there's like 6 rocks. Is that
Right,
rock?
yeah,
Is that a
that's all,
stone?
yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
You know? But I mean, it's more or less 400. We've got those charts like that on all of them, and the pictures, and the spreadsheet with all the statistics in there. So,
Right.
yeah, we're pretty comfortable. There's a few here. You know, you find a stone tossed over the wall sometimes. Kind of thing.
I also know there's very few people that actually do this work.
Right.
It's very limited. It's an art form, so to speak, to get people to fix them the right way.
No, I had met this guy. I'm on the board of Rock Hill, so I met this guy at Mass Cemetery Association. He was very well recommended, and I mean, he did great work. But working around is not great.
So the 25,000 actually, I think, is a relatively small request, because this can get into the hundreds of thousands of dollars.
There's going to be a lot more.
Yeah, I mean, but it's something that should be probably looked at each year, depending on, but it's a good start. I think
Yeah,
I think the fact that you're getting started on it is an important step forward. So I'll open up for questions. Anybody on the committee?
Just curious, what do they date back to, some of the stones?
Late 1700s.
Mark, you know that 24,999 would put you in capital outlay, not in capital budget. Do you know that? Okay. It's easier to get money in capital outlay than it is in capital budget.
Not always. No, it's not always. All right, any other questions?
Is this the first time that?
Yes,
has been on-
this is the first year this request has been put in,
Right.
right? Right.
Okay.
First time you've been before the committee as well.
I think it's a long time coming.
Yeah.
Worthwhile.
Glad to see that on the request.
Lucky you only have 6.
Yeah, there are some that are significantly more, but there's others that are more expansive, but maybe fewer, but just expansive.
Yeah, I mean,
In terms of-
100's a fair amount, so. a lot has-
I took care of the cemeteries in Easton. We had 90.
Oh,
Wow, 90 different cemeteries?
Yeah.
it's amazing.
So when we
$24.99 at a time?
met with you, Mark, you were saying how some of this money is going for the solvents and stuff that you're using, all the volunteers that are using to clean the,
Yeah, a small amount, yeah.
yeah. Oh, but so most of it's going to have professionals?
Yeah, we bought a gallon, I mean, when he was out, we bought a gallon of stuff from him, and that'll last us,
Yeah.
3 months or something.
Well, I was impressed with all the hard work that you guys have done yourselves, as volunteers.
Yeah. It's a worthwhile project. Other questions? All right, thanks, Mark.
All right,
Appreciate it.
thank you.
Okay. We're right on schedule here. Actually, we're running ahead of schedule a little bit here. But I see Tony is here, Municipal Buildings. Tony Masali.
Good morning. Thank you, Tom.
Thank you. All right.
Morning, everybody. How you doing?
Good morning.
So, first thing I want to start off with is the old state hospital building down at Payson Road. It's an abandoned building, and I feel there's a huge liability for the town, knowing that people get, kids are getting in there, safety concerns. We go in there all the time, we board it up, and a day later, someone gets in there again, and public safety, they're constantly, I got reports this thick of them going down there, doing their checks, and also having people calling, activity going on there. And, well, I'm requesting is some sort of a $150,000 to do the demolition of that building, get rid of everything. Like I said, it's causing a lot of liability. It is a nice piece of property that you can expand and do something to do with recreation. You could add another lacrosse field there. You can turn them around, you can do whatever you want in there. But what I'm asking over here is just basically, because there's a lot of abatement involved in it. It's a lot of stuff going on in that building. And I took some pictures just to guys to have a feeling how it looks in there. And that's basically it on that end of it. On the building, we got a couple of quotes for abatement. The abatement part is actually a very expensive part of it, the demolition part. Something has to be done there. This piece like Dave, the tree park, they actually have to go in the basement there, which is really not a very healthy environment.
It doesn't look it.
No.
We've had fires in there, we've had, kids hang out in there all the time. Even as much as we board it up, they find their way in. We're spending thousands of dollars trying to board it up every couple of months, and then all of a sudden, boom, they're in again.
So just for the sake of those who are listening at home today, can you just describe where that building is?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's down off of Payson Road. It's right behind the lacrosse field, where the scoreboard is. It's an old state laundry building that's existed from the state hospital there.
Okay.
And the town does own that property.
That property was transferred to the town's ownership as part of the overall state hospital property.
How long has the town been in possession of the property?
I don't have the question for that, the answer for that.
It's about 20 years.
20 years.
Right, Jim?
Sorry, what was the question?
How long have we owned that property? I think it's about 20 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
20 years.
Yeah.
20 years. Yeah.
Well, like I said, my concern is the liability, something, hopefully nothing does happen, but if it does, then I want to make sure everybody's well aware of the situation.
Tony, do you have a breakdown of the cost? How much is the abatement versus how much is just the
Yeah,
general
I'm looking
clean
at
out?
about right now 90,000 just for abatement.
And what about just cleaning out the interior of all the trash and debris?
I would try to push that in with the demolition if I could, but we're probably looking at about at least 60,000 on that. So that's why I'm asking about 150,000.
We've actually had a few fires in that building
Yes.
over the years.
This just looks like an
Always
accident waiting to
activity.
happen.
Right.
Is there a chance this could be more if they find out there's more hazardous material there than they thought?
Yes, because the company that I was dealing with, we never really got down into the basement because to them it was very, very hazardous and they didn't want to go down there without it. So the 90,000 does not really include the pipe wrapping in the basement at this point. But, but it includes everything else upstairs.
Is there any possibility of any state assistance in the removal of the building?
I heard that they do have some sort of grants out there from municipality. I'm not sure.
Sure.
about it.
I mean, it just-
I've heard rumors about it, that there is some sort of grant. I think it was like $25,000.
Sure.
That they will provide the town, but of course, that's something, but it's
Right,
not gonna
right.
take the whole building down, so. That end of it.
If I could just take a minute, Record Jim DeVellis. So I just spoke to Tony out in the hall a little bit. It's a little, and I agree, it is a liability out there. It's been kind of in the back of our minds for years. it's a little bit of the left hand and right hand. I didn't know this was on the agenda today. So I toured the building. Tony let us in. We actually made a door with a lock on it to get us in. So we toured it last year with a private company, an architect, structural guy, residents of the apartments that are down there. And there's a good possibility, rather than tearing it down, they would fund taking a lot of it down, the brick and the mortar down, saving the steel structure, redoing the floor, and having that area an outdoor
Pavilion.
meeting area, concerts, things like that, something that would fit in with the recreation, the soccer fields, and with the residents there. So it's progressed to the point where it's similar to what we did on the Lane property. We got private donations. I would put a group together to do the design. They would fund it, clean up the steel, put a nice top on it, make it like an art center type look. So we got a hold of them, so last year, and we did bring it to the rec, I think, the rec department. The town owns it, but the rec department has the land, and I think the town has the building, maybe something like that.
Correct.
So they were all behind it, and we had a committee that's been working. I didn't bring it forward earlier because it hasn't got to that point at the corporate level that they want it. You know, who they are and all that stuff, but there's a good possibility that you could see some good positive development there.
So they would actually do the demo and to the point where, and then just leave the steel in place?
Yeah,
and
we
then
looked
just
at it, the steel is in good shape, the roof is not. It's a combination of metal roof, and the brick and mortar would have to come down. So if you can envision a new concrete slab, probably half the building would be
Right.
gone. And then what we would save, we would renovate, you know, paint the steel, all that stuff, and it would be smaller, but it would be very functional.
So essentially what this means is that we have some options for reuse, potentially.
Yeah.
I actually view that building, and I didn't share this with you, Tony, but as I look at that from afar, I look at it from the perspective, you could probably have a roof on it. It could serve as a good-sized pavilion.
That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah, pavilion, which would be open all around, but have a nice roof, and then you'd have the concrete slab that would sort of seal everything else that's underneath it, if there's anything there.
Yeah,
You know, and then
and-
seal it, and then just use that for picnic tables, things of that nature, though, that for people could sit, and if they wanted to watch a game undercover, they could do that too.
That's it.
you-
So we
yeah.
run that through the sport groups, a couple of sport groups, and recreation, the people in that area. And it's, I haven't had any negative pushback on it. It's all been a positive. So we went into, we looked at everywhere for the plans for that building, couldn't find them anywhere in town. We ended up taking a trip to the archive building in Boston, spent a day going through all the archive drawings, and get some really decent structural plans. So we're in good shape to either go or no go with the company. So they're gonna be evaluating it this year.
So more to come is what you're saying, essentially.
So, Jim, if there's friable asbestos in the basement, you'd still have to abate that before you could do what you guys want to do.
Yeah, we're talking, in the basement area, and I was just talking this with Tony, we've got the irrigation pumps and the electric, all that stuff would have to come out. There's
Yeah.
a plan for that, that Tony has separate, and then all the abatement would be part of the, you know. And if, you know, we get to that point with the company, and they say, all right, we can put 200,000 into it, maybe the town comes back with a little bit, or we haven't got to the pricing of it yet, but in full evaluation of it.
The abatement's gonna be the costly part of this project. It's quite a bit of it.
Yeah.
Even like the roof and the windows, and I got a list of all the stuff. So I did have a survey done.
Yeah.
So if it's something like 150 to do full demo, maybe we go to the pavilion, and there's some of that can be used for assisting it to make it work.
So we, this was submitted this year. You said, you know, it's time for us to at least get this on a list. So that's why it's on this year for the first time. Perhaps it should have been done earlier, but, you know, but irrespective, it sounds to me that we could probably put together a group that could look at this further and come up with some options other than just tearing it down, and maybe look at some real reuse potential.
I mean, even if we can get the top part down, You know what I mean?
To
It's
remove the
not a hazard
liability.
there.
Right, to remove
You know,
the
we can
liability, yeah.
always close the basement off so people get in there, but just,
Right.
the idea is, once you have a closure, there's always gonna be someone trying to get in there and hang out and whatever they do.
Tony, how much does it cost us to replace the stuff that you've been replacing routinely, or, you know, to keep people out of it?
I mean, these days it's not cheap, boarding up, so it could, a couple of, 2,000 or 3,000 here, 5,000 here, 2,000 here, it's just.
You know, you got any idea about what an annual cost would be? 10
I
10
don't have
grand?
that at this point, but it's probably at least 5, 6, 7.
5, 6, 7,000? So if we were to try to keep it where it is right now, do a plan, come up with a scheme that works and everybody's
Come up with a funding
agreement,
mechanism.
and come up with a funding mechanism and do it.
I think before you even go there, you have to come up with a plan to get all this crap out of here. Because this,
Right.
to close a building and leave all the contents in there like that, it's
A
not
lot
good,
of the
not
contacts
good,
coming
man.
in, that's the thing, like a lot of the couches and chairs, I don't know, you bring a moving truck at night or something, but it seems to get, you know. Yeah, it's like, you know, some of that stuff.
Salvation Army is what it's turned out to be.
But, you know, everything in there, it's just rotted, like, there's absolutely no value, but it is. You know, right now, it's, you put a door on it with a lock, and it's secured, so that every once in a while, the kids will get in there, so it's,
Yeah, they'll cut through the, I mean, that, I've had them where they cut through the wood, get the wood on there, they'll come in there with a sawzall.
You know, this may sound funny, all right? But with today's technology, you know, the little cameras
Right.
at home, I mean, something like that, at least you'll see who's getting in there.
Right.
But you gotta clean the contents out, because this is, I mean,
Not making it any better.
no.
And, I don't know, can we get a machine there, or?
I gotta look at
I
it.
think we can, I mean, I think there's a way of getting,
A bobcat, maybe.
yeah, that's what I
That's all you
mean.
need.
yeah, there are overhead, you can get in, it's more, you know, how many dumpsters.
The problem is, if there's friable asbestos in there, the guy's gotta be suited up with breathing apparatus and everything, you know?
Right. Well, the basement part is the one that the asbestos is.
Yeah.
The other stuff is, you know, until you move it and break it, that's when we'll.
Yeah, well, that's the problem when you start bringing machines in.
That's exactly.
I think to Dave's point, though, it's not a matter of going into cleanup, because the demo process will get rid of all that. I would not want to put any of our employees in that building to do any kind of work.
I didn't say our employees. I didn't say our employees.
Well, then you'd be paying some contractors to go in and do it. But again, typically, if you're gonna go through this process, you're gonna bring in Lopes or one of the other large, you know, companies to take the stuff down, they're just gonna scoop it up, all of it at one point in time, take it out. They're not gonna even worry about it, so, you know, you're gonna have to get to that phase anyways. You're not that far away from it. And as Tony said, we could clean the thing out, make it look like a ballroom, and tomorrow you'll have a living room back in there, so.
And it might be more inviting.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think the cameras going up is a good idea. We've, they're cheap. We used them at the landfill, and we stopped all the activity on the landfill with them, so.
Probably, we could probably, you know, probably feedback with public safety.
Yeah, easy to do.
Other questions from the committee? All right, thank you.
Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tim. Thanks, Tony. Next item?
The next item, I'm gonna have Heather Harding start off with that.
Oh, thank you. Sure.
Thank you.
And also the
Great, thanks.
posted.
Thank you. Take one of those, too.
Thanks.
So you guys also have this in agenda, but, Heather Harding, and I'm here with a whole group of people that are working on this. Linda, Mark, Tony, Jim, Jack, Debbie, and actually, Bill, Roger, and Chris also. So, we are here to ask for $150,000 for electrical upgrades to the common. And this probably should have been on 20 years ago, but really there's no real group that claims ownership of the common. I mean, technically it falls under the Board of Selectmen and Town Manager, but really there was kind of nobody, it wasn't on anybody's radar. So what happened was, a couple of years ago, when the groups that use it, Recreation, the JCs, the Historical Society, we started realizing that we're running into obstacles to be able to do what we want to do up there because the electricity was so far gone. So we started meeting and kind of looking at how we could maybe, use Band-Aids and duct tape and keep it going. And Eddie Noonan, God bless him, did it for a lot of years. And we kind of got to the point where the plugs were removed because they were, broken. And now if you try to run an extension cord and you plug it in somewhere else, you short out the lights on the memorial, and then the lampposts go, and then you've got to call Carl at home, and he's thrilled with that, and you try to fix the lights, and they're rotted. So we really realized it opened a can of worms. Should have been addressed years ago, but we're sorry, we're here now. I mean, it's to the point where it's become dangerous. So we kind of started the process by meeting and seeing what we wanted to do, and that's what this group has been doing. We then went to the Historical Commission, because that's kind of the way the process works. Before we come to town, we bid everything through them. Tony had put together a couple of options for different post lights, because the ones up there really just can't be salvaged anymore. We went to Historical. The one you have here is the one that our committee and the Historical Commission liked the best. It's in keeping with what we have up there. It also matches the other ones that are already installed around town. So we liked that. We did meet with some of the other boards and commissions and some of the businesses uptown. We haven't received any negative feedback. I mean, our pitch is that the common is the focal point of the uptown, and especially right now, there is such a push to revitalize uptown, and we've done what we can on a volunteer basis with flagpoles and flower buckets and farmers markets and concerts and yard sales, and none of that has been at a cost to the town, but that only does so much. This is really an infrastructure item that now is the time. We can't do any more that we want to do. If you look at some of these pictures, sorry, Devin, this is our tree lighting, and we had to borrow spotlights from the fire department, which if you turn and look at them blind you, it's just not a good look. We had to use flashlights to light some of our events. This is our farmers market, which was amazingly successful and wonderful, but once it started to get a little dark, there was no illumination. We wanted to run those globe lights that you see at a lot of them, but there's no plugs, and if we run extension cords, we trip people. There's also a couple of monuments up there that have been put in, and those aren't lit yet, just because the electricity doesn't go to them. So we could also get all the memorials and the monuments lit. Pretty much, we want to try to revitalize uptown, and Economic Development 101 is businesses want to go where there are people, where people gather. And we have 17,000 people in this town. We should not have a problem getting foot traffic uptown, but we've got to have a reason for people to come up there. And, what we hear a lot of times is it's dark when you have to walk through the common at night, when you're coming from one place to the other. And we all know parking can be a little difficult. So if you have to park at one end to walk to the other, we want it to be illuminated nicely, and we want it to be a draw. We want people to want to hang out up there, basically. So that's what we're looking at. There are other towns that have done similar things. Taunton, I was there yesterday, and they've put a lot of money into their Taunton Green, and it just looks beautiful year-round now, and a lot of people are out walking around, even on a cold day, like yesterday, and I'm not saying we want to be Taunton. That's not what I'm saying. But, it just shows that if you invest a little bit in your downtown area like Taunton did, we can do the same thing and get people to our uptown area. There's no reason it wouldn't work for us. So, Linda, what else? What am I missing? Anything?
No, I think that it's, there isn't anybody, one group that can petition for this. So that's why you have this huge crowd here, because we all have our different interests in it. So I also think that it's something where the town departments themselves could maybe chip in a little bit so that we could get this going and not have to be on your docket for 5 years waiting to get this done, so.
So I'm just going to just go back and just make a couple additional points about this. This actually started because we were looking to try and secure funding for doing Christmas decorations.
Yes, for more holiday lights,
For more
yes.
holiday lights.
Yes,
All right, so when we realized that there's no place to plug them in.
right.
So, and it was, an X cost to do the holiday lights, but you
Right.
can't do the holiday lights until you have a place to plug them in because they won't get illuminated. Which, I agree that, this is the focal point of the town, and I agree that there is, that we could do a lot more with decorating that area, particularly around the holidays. So when we said, we had the conversation, I said, when was the last time we spent any money on the common? Other than the flagpole, which was, by the way, was donated, which was $35,000 raised by a lot of folks in town to do that work, which came out really, really nice. But we haven't spent any real money on the common in years. I mean, it's been 50 years. That's the closest estimate we had, was to do any kind of investment in that. So if you take a look at the common, you'll see that there are benches that need to be replaced. There are sidewalks that could be fixed. And if we do the underground electrical, which we have to add conduit to do it right, because there's direct burial in many of the lines around the common. It's all
Except for the
direct burial.
new lights that they did around the common, the street lights are fine, but everything else inside is all underground.
So what we would do is put conduit in around the entire common, fix the areas that we have to break up the sidewalk to redo those areas, and then also and maybe provide some additional landscaping to really dress it up, to make it really the area that people really take pride in. So the challenge is that facilities each year is that they spend a lot of time using wire and duct tape to keep the place going and keeping the lights on, and sometimes what happens is that, you'll see that I occasionally get a phone call, 3 or 4 lights are out. Well, it turns out there's a whole circuit that's out. And it's not the lights themselves, the lights all work now, but the circuits go down because the wire gets rotted through or something like that happens. And then when Tony actually goes to try and fix the lights are starting to rust out and they're starting to fall apart. So there's no question, and I say no question, that we need to put some investment into the common. The challenge is that whether are we going to be able to afford it this year, and that's a conversation we've already had. But I think I'm very grateful to all of you for the work that you've done to get this to this point, because we have to start somewhere, because I think this is an area that does require some level of investment. It's the one area, by the way, that you see a lot of time on national TV on Sundays, because they'll focus on an area in Foxboro because of the unique and quaintness of the community, and people love seeing that. And so we want to be able to dress that up to an area that really, we're all proud of. And I think that's something that's really good, so I'm very grateful for that. So I'll end my comments there, but anybody else in the committee, feel free.
Have you guys gotten any bids on the lamp posts and the wiring, the conduit?
Yeah, the electrical part is pretty basic. It's a pretty hard number. I got about, between material and labor and area, you're talking close to 50,000, with the precast posts in the ground. The tricky part is the type of lamp post, because lamp posts can go anywhere from $2,000 a post to $4,000 a post. It all depends what kind of light post. So that can vary in price. I mean, you could spend 30 grand on them, or you could spend $100,000 on them. But the electrical part itself, with the base and the conduit and everything, is around $50,000, and I've got some prices on that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, Mark and Jack, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but when we went to historical, we kind of gave them some pictures to look at to see what they would like, not necessarily saying it's going to be exactly that one, because we're going to leave it up to Tony to find the post that works best for us, that's low maintenance, that's cost. But the commission really wanted to stick with the same idea of the lamp post that we have otherwise, kind of typical New England lamp post. There was a little bit of concern raised. The tops that are there now were like hand forged in 1972, I think, right, Jack? Something like that. And there was some talk about possibly going back to that place that's in Bridgewater and seeing if they could recreate them and do them again for us, and maybe it wouldn't even cost any more than having to purchase them, and Historical was willing to take that part of the project on with us, so.
Does it make sense to break this into two projects? Do the underground infrastructure, electricity, put a couple of power pedestals in, so you can do the lights, you'll have the extra power for the farmer's market, and you'll have the ability to plug stuff in without tripping circuits, and then come back with another request for the replacement of the light posts and whatever else that we need to do.
Well, the thing that we're trying to do here is, originally we were gonna add outlets to the light poles, but it's very hard. I've talked to the electrical inspector, he wasn't thrilled about having pipe coming out and going into it. So these poles that we're looking to buy are gonna have receptacles built right in. It'll be a different circuit from the light, but that was part of it, because everything would be piped underground. If you left the lights on, I would have everything piped, but then you still have the old wire going into the light. It's all buried in between the concrete. So,
I know it's not ideal, but clearly we need to do something. If we don't have.
I mean, all I've been doing lately is if I lose a light and I find it's 150 feet of burial wire is no good, well, I go to the closest light and try to reroute it. And that's what we've been doing. We did that over on, you can see there's a patch on the entrance there because of that, because I'm not gonna dig up 150 feet of wire just to do 3 poles, so I try to steal it, and, you know, but to really do this right, you wanna get it from point A, all piped, and piped into the, if you do it your way, you'll have a bunch of boxes in the ground that you'll have to go
Well,
back.
you'll have a pedestal, that when you do the lights, you can remove the pedestal.
Right.
All right?
Well, go ahead, no, you go.
Yeah, so, I mean, we looked at, initially when we sat together, it was this much we were asking for, because it said, well, if you're gonna conduit underneath the walkways, why not replace the walkways? And, you know, then where do you stop? So let's do all the walkways. No one's done the benches, so we started with this much. We've kind of engineered it down to this much. If we break it in half again to do it, the startup costs and the rebidding and all that stuff, we're not gonna save any. And I put it in this perspective, if you look at the picture on the wall up there with the nice Foxboro Incorporated, if you go out there right now, there's just a plastic banner blowing. We're not even paying for that. The J.C. stepped up in replacing that. They were gonna paint it, but they found out it's beyond repair, so they're at no cost to the town. If you look at that board, it says us, that's who. Every meeting that we've been to in every committee, they say, well, who's paying for it, who's responsible, who's doing this? You look at this, it's under the purview of the selectmen. We're all volunteers, right? Other than the administration, we don't have a budget. So the answer to us, that's who is this board. You look at, you got the school committee, you got advisory committee, you got DPW, finance. We're all responsible, everybody and nobody. So this is the opportunity to say this is important to the town. And if you look at last Tuesday's meeting, everyone's talking about revitalizing. It's time that we walk the walk a little bit. If we're gonna ask people to invest in downtown, all we're looking to is to get to the starting point of infrastructure so we can continue to do the farmers markets and the J.C.'s and, you know, so when the news people come and you say they, you know, it's very, very visual, and they see a banner that is $18 that was donated in preparation of more stuff that's coming that the town just doesn't spend any money on. And we had this discussion back with Jack when we were doing the flagpole. He was of the mindset, you know, when this common was put together, it was for the people, by the people. And I mean, I argued with him a little bit. I said, those days are over of passing the boot and, you know, war bonds, because that's how we wanted to do the flagpole. And he said, I'll be damned if the town pays for the flagpole. This is our flagpole, not a government flagpole. And we raised $40,000, mostly, you know, Jack and Tina and all these people that worked on it. But all we're asking for is the the electricity, so we can do what the people need to do out there. And, you know, the few years that I've been doing this, I've seen the events, you know, the political events, the rallying around a family, the need event, it's getting used more and more. And if we're asking residential development to come in that area, we need lights. So a little long-winded, but this group is the one that says, you know, enough of the duct tape, and we need to put some money into this.
But to answer your question, we did look to see if we could get by with stuff. The reason we can't is even with like the holiday lights being LED, what we want to do is wrap all the lamp posts. So you're talking hundreds of feet of extension cord, which have to be taped over. With respect to our farmers market, we're now this year already up to like over 20 vendors. That's a long thing to be saying to them, run an extension cord. You know, the J.C.'s market, we couldn't figure out where to just put one because you're going to be running so many extension cords. You know, the holiday lights, we want to wrap the common rail, and they can only do, I think it's like 3 or 4 strings, even though they're LED, and then they plug in. So it would be a mess of extension cords to try to, that might be even worse, you know? So we did think about that. What can we do to get us by? And we kind of keep coming back to, we're past being able to get by. We do that now.
It is interesting though, but this year was the first year anybody could remember, we actually had a real serious conversation about how to fix this.
Right.
And I
This
think that
area.
goes to
So-
Jim's point, it's us or nobody.
Right.
Right.
And
And there is
I'm
no
on this.
advocate for it.
No.
And I
You're right.
think
There
there's
is no
several of
advocate.
us on this because we just feel strongly about the common, and it needed a face, it needed faces in addition to historical to push
Right.
for whatever might be right for the common.
Well, this is an infrastructure project, and there's no doubt that it's
The town.
the responsibility of the town.
I agree.
There's no
I
debate
understand
about
that.
that.
I agree.
I mean, the least you can do and get away with is maybe put the, you know, the precast in and put the post in, and then maybe use the existing head until we have enough money to have a new head put in. But at least that part, everything will be hardwired. The only thing that will be old would be the top head, you know, but that to me, and then we'd have to go back and replace the heads on it. But the pole, the precast, you have to do that right away. I mean, you can't do everything and then not do the poles. Because
I
the
look-
poles
I
are
look
gonna
at
have
this-
the outlets in them.
I look at this as a typical project that we do all the time. You plan the work, and then you work the plan. That's how you get these things done. They don't happen by themselves. It takes effort, it takes time, and it takes money. And,
I mean, the DPW is gonna be a big part of it.
yeah,
too, because they're gonna be doing all the trenching.
we've done a ton of work up there. And, you know, the flagpole was a donation, but a lot of the time and effort that went into the flagpole was DPW time and effort, no doubt about it. And that's what we're here for. That's the reason the DPW exists, is to be able to marshal assets, bring them to a problem and solve it. And I see this as an important project. I think those conduits ought to be planned, and where the posts go ought to be planned, and where the risers go for the plugs ought to be planned. And then you lay it out and dig it and put it in, and then you forget about it for 20 years or 30 years. You put pull boxes in and, you know.
More like 50 years.
Pull the wire, you're done. And get good wire, no aluminum.
No, we do it right.
So I'm going to recognize Jack Othwett.
Yes, if I may, I just want to correct a couple of things, be real quick, but then the importance of this, and I know there's a lot of other demands for more money, but we have something unique here. Going back to the very, very beginning, there was an unlovely lot in the center of town from the old meeting house, and it was people who came forward, private citizens, that said, let us beautify that area. And in 1857, they laid out what we see up there today, those people, and their first flagpole and all of those. And to me, it has always been the greatest privilege to be a generation that would reach back and pick up on what they built and passed to us, that we rebuild and rehabilitate and pass it on to future generations. This is our responsibility. Now, for years, we worked with Tree and Park Department. In 1971 and 72, there was a major effort to raise the money, get a patent to make new sections of the common fence. They could no longer be repaired. It was a 100% citizen effort, because we're echoing what the citizens before us did. We had money left over from that effort because a local man made the patent for us, and that is when the lanterns went back onto the common. They hadn't been there for decades. Now, I must admit, it's hard to admit to the passage of time that what we had handcrafted from old photos to put in there in 1972 has now aged out and has to be replaced. But the spirit is still there. But I have to say that for decades, and that is plural, the Tree and Park Department would receive calls from either Ed Noonan or myself about a light being out, this being misplaced, something being wrong. And all those decades, Ed Noonan was up there as a volunteer, fixing, repairing. Then as the lanterns aged, more work was done. His son formed a company, he did some work, but the fact was that it had everyday attention. Every night, when Ed walked his dog, he'd go up and see any lights that are out. Anytime some of us came out back into town at night, we would loop the common and write down the lanterns were out, and they were repaired immediately. Then came all the additions, the illumination of the memorials at night, so that darkness would never fall upon the names of those who made the supreme sacrifice for our country. All of these things were all then pushed into Tree and Park as additions, but they were done with a people effort. But all these additions, eventually, it takes its due wear and tear, and we can't mix and match anymore on the repairs. And I mean, so many times we would have to go in and totally redo all the wiring inside the bandstand, because different groups would do different things, and we had to bring it under one head with Ed. So I think that we were then prohibited from doing any of that work anymore. Ed was not allowed to do that. A matter that was, to me,
Bone of contention.
well, it was.
Great loss.
I would refrain from expressing this. But the thing is, this is the heartbeat of the community. And this is the driving force behind this whole thing from the day one has been people. We care. We are willing to invest, to rebuild the past and pass it to the future. The greatest thing that we could ever do for our town, and here we are again. Now, the urgency of this, because age accelerates deterioration, we're at a point where
Not be excluded, right?
we've got to we've got to step in and say, this is a tough time, maybe, to all of a sudden go back and take some money. But it isn't. In other words, what we did on a routine basis with Tree and Park over the years, day by day by day, is gone. So now, I had been involved in every decision about the common for decades. And now we're just kind of out of the loop a bit. But the dedication and the commitment is still there. And when you look at that common, and you realize you're going to have to reach for your wallet, think of the faces of the people and the families, the school children, everybody that put every dollar they could raise into what we have there today. Let's pick up where they left off and say, this is our year to now refurbish the entire thing professionally and be done.
Thank you. All right. Anyone else, any other comments from the board?
I just have one question. Tony, would you describe the electric that's up there now? Is that dangerous?
It has its moments. Usually in the springtime when the ground, it all depends what the water table is.
It's on direct area.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not in conduits.
I can speak to that, too.
If it's wet, you can't plug anything in or you get zapped, but if
We
it's dry, you're okay.
We had to put our own light outlet in to have the Christmas tree lit, and we have to go up there at night and plug it in. And we have to crawl under the tree, whether it's snow or not, and plug it in. Then I would say that it had a
You only get
element
zapped
of,
if it's
an
wet.
element of dangerousness.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions, comments from the board? All right. Thank you very much.
Thanks. We're stepping up, but we'll be back. Does anybody want us to bring them anything? Coffee, water, anything?
Thank you.
You good?
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, sticking with the schedule, note for the record, we are on time, which is good. Foxborough Public Schools.
Thank you.
Is this the same thing?
It's the same thing.
Yeah, I think we are,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So just put it between the two of us. then we'll be fine.
Sorry, no.
All right, Mr. Yukna.
So we have 4 items that are on the CIP request for the school side. 3 of them are more standard requests, and one is an addition to some work at the Borough Elementary School. The first one is our network computer hardware, software annual request. We've been doing this for well over 10 years at this point in time. Obviously, our technology has grown significantly throughout the district, as well as throughout the town. And we use this funding not only to support the computers within the classrooms and the teachers' computers, but also the technology like the interactive whiteboards, the switching gear, the wireless access points, the backup servers, pretty much everything that goes into our network. So what was once just buying computers that kind of stood alone has really kind of morphed into a much larger entity in its own. As you know, a number of years ago when Aaron joined us, we built out 2 data centers, one that's in the high school, which is fully functional in any kind of an emergency with its own power supply, and we also have one at the Joint Public Safety Building as well. And that's really what keeps this town up and running 24/7. So while this number has gone up a little bit over the years, it used to be about 150,000 years ago. The last couple of years, it's been at this 190. For years, we were closer to 1,000 computers that we're maintaining. Now we're closer to 1,800 computers that we're maintaining. A lot of that on the school side is because of our testing requirements. We have narrow windows during the year in which we have to test entire grades of things over multiple days. And obviously, you don't have the option of having one that people have to share at those times. We have to have the actual numbers of computers. So that's what's kind of grown our request as far as the computer side of it. But again, the access points and network gear is a lot of the cost as well. So do you have anything?
Really, as Bill said, the scope of this request in terms of the amount of equipment and types of equipment that it provides maintenance and replacement for has really increased substantially. As Bill listed, it's not only computers, but it's also infrastructure and classroom technology as well. Several years ago, I think we were probably under the belief that things like projectors or wireless infrastructure was a one-time or a single outlay type event, that once your buildings were wireless, you were done. But what we've seen is this technology continues to change and improve just like all other technology. And in order to keep up with current standards in terms of delivering instructional programs that meet today's needs, we need to continually replace this equipment as well. So although there has been an increase to this line, considering the increase in terms of scope of which the equipment it's servicing and replacing, it's not very significant in terms of those means. The other thing I'd like to mention too is we're always evaluating and reevaluating our instructional programs and their technology and the commensurate technology need. So we're not replacing equipment because we have equipment to be replaced. We're constantly evaluating how equipment's used, what the needs of the instructional program are, and being thoughtful with these funds. And that is partly why we're able to have increased the scope of this as much as we have with this little amount of additional funds.
Do you want to
Any
go through them all, or do you
questions
want
about
questions
that?
on each?
Just one question I have is, so the difference between what, the annual request you make for this is how much? You've done this every year.
For
correct?
capital, 190. So this isn't an increase over last year. I think Bill was referencing since over the last 10 years, it's gone from 150,000 to 190. But just pointing out that the scope in terms of the amount of equipment and types of equipment which we're replacing has substantially changed.
Okay.
Yeah, and a quick one on that, like the original interactive whiteboard computer projectors we put in, they actually got to the point where the bulb was almost as expensive as buying a new projector because of the old technology. Whereas now, obviously, the newer projectors are all LED, so it's the life on them is a lot longer, and they did have a shorter life than I think everybody kind of thought they would have over time. So,
Other questions, anybody?
I have two. First one, is the amount of copies that you guys produce, which is a lot.
do you want to go one at a time, though, Dave?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Okay, I'm sorry.
We can do that.
Because we-
Any other questions?
Anything on the computer?
Just the questions about the computers. All right, let's move on to the next.
All right, so the second request is our bus replacement. We operate, as you know, a bus fleet. We have 22 full-size buses and 6 minis. There's a staff at the DPW that actually maintains our buses. The standard pretty much in the industry is you're looking at about a 10-year life on these vehicles. Not so much for necessarily mileage, but for rot. We are in a part of the country where the sand and the salt really eats the bottom of these buses away over time. So, and we go into cycles. We've been in a cycle for the last couple of years where we were getting 2 full-size and 1 mini. This year, we're requesting just the 2 full-size. In the fleet, we basically have or maintain what we call reserve or backup buses. So there's 2 minis that are reserves and there's 5 of the large ones. Ironically, while we call them reserves, they're brought into service pretty much every day because of field trips and other things where we can't take our regular buses because they're in the routes doing their job. So we obviously will rotate into the older ones into that backup role, so we don't have to have them on the roads on a regular basis, but you know, try to control from there. So the 2 buses that we're replacing are number 2 and number 7. Number 7 is a 2009, so it's going to be basically 10 years old or 11 years old this year. It's a relatively low mileage thing, but the bottom of the frame, according to our mechanics, is really in trouble, and they don't really want to put any more money into this because they're afraid of the condition. The second one has the motor mounts themselves are cracked. It's got about 88,000 miles on it. It's a 2011. And again, they're recommending strongly that we get that one off the road and try to get what we can while we can on a trade. So those would be the 2 vehicles we're replacing. As you know, a number of years, or may not know, but as we've been doing for a number of years now, we do put cameras on the new buses. We made an agreement with the school committee in the town that we wouldn't go and try to retrofit all the buses, but we would do them as we buy them. This is really, I think, protected the town and the children to a high degree. One of the best advantages we get out of that now, and we've got a great relationship with the police department, but the cameras on the bus actually take pictures of the cars going through the buses when they're stopped, and you can prove that they went through when the sign was out and the crossing was down. It's a very dangerous situation, so that's one of the biggest safety advantages we got, quite honestly, out of putting the cameras. We didn't even, we were really thinking about potential problems in the bus, but it ended up being the outside of the bus that was the bigger thing. Costs us about $3,500 a bus to outfit them with 5 cameras and the recording devices and stuff. But again, I think it's proven its weight for us quite often.
It still has been helpful on the inside of the bus as well.
Right.
If we have a behavioral problem or something, you can very easily identify where the issue is and be able to address it directly versus,
Hearsay.
having the bus driver be distracted trying to figure out what's going on. So that would, we'd basically be at $160,000. We've always given back a few thousand if we're able to get a better trade. The trades are really, each dealership that bids on these can go anywhere from $3,500 to $8,000 a piece. You don't know which one's going to give you the lower bid based on that. I've actually talked to Roger in the past and potentially just putting these through the regular bid or the auction process to see if we would actually get more.
We do get more.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about it.
But the negative to that is then you'd have to fund this one higher
Has to
because
be
that money's going to
refunded.
go into the general
Has to be
fund. So
refunded.
there's two ways to look at how you do that, but, so that's our bus.
All right, any questions from the committee? Roger, I know you probably know the most about this issue, other than Bill. Any thoughts about this?
The program works. We're getting rid of the old internationals now, one by one. And the newer buses are better. There's no doubt about that. How much better is problematic, I guess. But, I think over time, maybe we should get into a program where we auction them, because we've done much better in the auction with our stuff. And I think the buses would do a lot better in the auction too. But, that money goes into general and then you have to reappropriate it every year, so.
Okay. Other questions, comments about the buses? All right, let's move on to the next one.
Third one is our copier replacement. We basically have stayed very consistent on how many copies we make a year, so we're pretty close to 8 million copies throughout the 5 buildings in the district. What we do now, though, is we tend to buy bigger, heavier duty machines that can give us a couple million copies apiece versus the lighter weight ones that were good for about 1 million, 1.2 million. And that's been working actually very well for us. Obviously, the hope that we would be a paperless society hasn't really worked in the school departments because of the amount of testing we do and just general information that we're trying to supply. Some things aren't in books, but teachers can find it on the websites and print it out and get it to the students to be able to work with. And so it's stayed pretty consistent overall. But this is, like I said, a recycled process. What we do is we also, when we buy them, we make sure we have the 3-year warranties on the machine so that we're not paying any maintenance during the 3-year period of time. Most of the machines will get an extra 1 or 2 years out of, which has worked out well, but we just make sure at the end of the 3rd year that they've got a good work over and had anything repaired that needed to be repaired. And that's actually been very good for us as well. So there's a multi-step process to how we're dealing with these copiers, but it's so far, in the 7 years I've been here, it's worked out well for us. We really don't have any machines that are down and not working, so.
Other comments from the committee?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna ask, is the amount of copies produced make it cost prohibitive to look at leasing?
Well, and that's why the added years actually works, because we even did that here at the town hall when they finally decided to move over. We used our connections to do the purchase. The leasing process itself is really cost-effective up to that 3 years. So if you can get that 4th and maybe that 5th year out of a copier, you're way ahead of the game. It's kind of like the way I look at the buses that we buy, where all the towns switched out of doing buses themselves and going to private contractors. When they first did that, they all got great rates in doing it. Now the fact that we maintain our buses, when I do the calculation of what private sector is charging out, we're far under it than what they're paying. So I look at this the same way. It's like, yes, we're purchasing it, but we're not going to get just 3 years. We're going to get that, try to go for that 4th or 5th year. And it has been working, so.
Great, thank you. Other questions, comments?
Yeah, how many of these copiers do you have?
In total, there are 22 copiers throughout the district.
So you do
And all
4
of
each year?
these?
Yeah, roughly.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments, further comments? All right, move on to the next one.
Final one is the sewer connection. As you know, the town meeting approved $85,000 to come out of the $700,000 to buy the capacity. This is a very critical component to us to do the borough project itself. The school district put away almost $50,000 last year with the hope that we were actually going to be able to do the connection last summer to make this work out of our building funds. And unfortunately, when we went out to bid with the local contractors, the step that I guess we underestimated the value of it was that last step from the last manhole on the property to the manhole in the street. And all the contractors are up in their prices significantly for that small stretch because of the concern of being in the street. And so every price came in closer to the 80,000 range that we were dealing with, which, you know, again, for us to make this whole process work, we need that sewer capacity this summer completed so that when we finally get to the fall and we start our work on the actual building project, that's a done deal. And so that's why we're requesting the additional 30,000. That would get us, with the 49 that we've put away, get us up to the amount that we believe we can get the project done for. And I haven't talked to Roger about this, I mean, but the only other option we would have is if somehow the DPW and Water Department could work with us just to get to that first manhole done. Maybe that would help us getting the pricing done. But we'd still have cost, obviously, in the manholes, the piping and stuff like that. So it's not free by any means, you know, that goes either, so. But that's, you know, where we are with this.
Other questions, comments from the committee? Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. You're still here?
That concludes the request from the Foxborough Public Schools. Total request is $420,000 in total. All right, Aaron, information systems. We're running a little bit ahead of time, but that's okay. You can go ahead and start. We'll address that first, and then public safety is right after that, so, okay. Aaron, we're all set.
All right, so, a couple different requests this year in terms of information systems. The first is a computer hardware, software, and network request. This is, I believe this is the 4th year we've put this request forward. Similar to the request we make at the schools, this request allows us to continually maintain, upgrade, and replace equipment throughout the town. Again, when I first came on board here in Foxborough just over 5 years ago, there was really some substantial deficits in technology infrastructure on the town side specifically. So this request, year after year, has gone directly to addressing those issues. And then this most recent year, with a substantial amount of funds going to upgrading the town's abilities in terms of productivity and software licensing to bring the town up to today's standards and give our staff the tools they need to serve the town. This money is really vital to town operations in terms of technology has really become like a utility in terms of something that we cannot go without in terms of providing constituent services and municipal operations. The scope of this has also increased quite a bit in terms of our involvement with public safety and other departments in terms of the equipment we were replacing. Prior to me coming on board, there were departments that were putting capital requests forward for computer hardware replacements. We've absorbed those into this line item or into this request and it allows us to provide continuity of service through our intermunicipal IT department by standardization. Okay.
Comments and questions from the committee? So is this referring to item, which information, this is just, the first was the $150,000
Correct.
request? Okay.
Correct.
Is there, can you just provide a breakdown of what that is for the committee, Aaron?
So these funds are used to replace obsolete networking equipment, computer hardware, so computers, monitors, printers, multimedia equipment, anything relating to technology throughout the town. Town-wide, there's approximately 350 desktop computers in which we're supporting, and quite a few of them are ready for replacement. There's a number of software systems that you're going to hear about in our next request that we're prohibited by the age of hardware throughout town. So it's really necessary, again, to keep current on this equipment and continually refresh it, so we don't end up in a situation like we were several years ago, where it was kind of like everything needed to be done at once. But also to allow us to continue to advance in terms of providing 21st century governance.
Other comments, questions from the committee on this?
Can you just give a little breakdown on how much of this is training and how much of it is software?
So in this particular year, it is likely that most of this will be hardware-related and ancillary software.
Okay.
So computers, actually computers on desks, kiosks, for public use, in terms of providing more continuity and service here at the town hall. But user-facing equipment, we've really focused on back-end infrastructure. Fortunately, on the town side, the technology life cycle isn't as short as it is on the educational side in terms of the infrastructure equipment. But there's still some additional needs in infrastructure, but we've really focused on that quite a bit. So it's primarily will be end-user facing equipment and ancillary software licensing.
Okay.
Other questions, comments from the committee? All right, next item?
Okay. I actually don't have
Is this the GIS?
the GA, okay.
People GIS?
So this next request here, unlike hardware, is a little more exciting because of the impact it has throughout the town, and specifically in expanding our ability to provide, again, 21st century governance and enhanced constituent services. So this request here, it's for $75,000. It's for a substantial investment in technology and operational efficiency through the use of software and process modernization brought on by software. Your support of this request, again, will provide a municipal CRM and operations software that will be used throughout town and will enhance the town's GIS capabilities. It will enhance our abilities to track and share data between permitting, inspection, and licensing. This is really a platform for a business software platform for which the town will operate and continue to expand use throughout town.
So I can speak to this a little bit because I've reviewed this request with Aaron and his team. Actually, there was a number of folks who participated in this discussion and review. The current software that we have is outdated and outmoded and is not interactive with other departments.
Mm-hmm.
So literally, when an application comes in for a license or a request for a permit, people literally have to walk them from place to place to actually get the information, as opposed to having a real-time understanding of where the process, where the permit or request, license is in terms of the processing portion.
Yeah, this,
Go ahead.
as Bill said, I mean, in terms of, continuity of service, so there's currently several different software programs that are being used in town.
Right.
A number of these programs are quite old. Many of them have been acquired by other companies for the purpose of simply just acquiring their customer base or other intellectual property. Support for these products has been ended, and in some cases is not available to us even through post-service agreements. So it really is, this upgrade is really necessary. But two, this request will allow us to move forward in terms of our strategic mission, in terms of data interoperability and modernization of town hall services, bringing really a consistent level of service throughout the town hall in which our constituents experience. So currently, when residents or people doing business in town would like to apply for a building permit, they're able to do that online. Not only are they able to do that online, they're able to pay online. They're able to request inspections online. In other departments where inspections or permits or licenses are available, they have to come here to Town Hall to do those things. And they're not able to do any of it online or to check up on any of the status. Also, it's often put onto the constituent or the person that is looking to do business in town to move the process along. There is a very manual workflow which relies on that individual to contact and reach out to a number of departments. So somebody may be looking to open a business in town, may need to see the building department, may need to see the health department, may need to see planning, may need to see licensing or the Board of Selectmen's office or town manager's office. And there may be subordinate requirements that each of these processes have that they are then charged with facilitating. So if somebody needs a sign off to the Board of Health, they're taking their building application to the Board of Health and they're getting it signed and then they're bringing it back. So this software and this package will allow us to improve our operational efficiency by creating a workflow that would facilitate these sign-offs and would also create clear data interoperability and transparency in terms of the process and take a lot of that responsibility off of the constituent or the person doing business in town, but not creating a lot of additional burden on staff that's already doing so many different tasks.
I think what's key about the solution that's being offered here is that it's customer-centric, in the sense that, there are different groups of customers. There's the customers that are the outside customers coming in to do their business. There's also the internal customers, which are the various department and personnel that try and process these things. And at the same time, there's inefficiencies with the existing way that we do that, because effectively, when someone contacts the building department, they effectively open up an account with this software. And essentially what happens is that gets transferred across the entire spectrum of various town departments that will participate in that process, whether it be public safety, whether it be building department, health, as you point out, the selectman's office, whatever, which creates a consistency in terms of how the customer is receiving that information. And not only that, but we can do it online, which is something that really should be done nowadays. You would think that would have been done 10 years ago, but we should be able to do that, and we're not doing that. So we need to do that now, because obviously that's the best way that customers want to deal with that information. Moreover, what's particularly interesting about the solution that's being offered here, and they went through a very extensive process to try and find out what was the best solution, was that this particular vendor offers a GIS component, which is something that we don't have. We have a limited GIS capability in town. We have a person that coordinates GIS information, but we don't have the wide-ranging tool that allows us to really utilize the services that we should be able to at this point in time. So this is a all-encompassing tool that not only is it good for the customers, but it's also efficient and cost-effective in many, many ways. So, so I appreciate that the request being made here, but I'll open it up for questions and comments beyond that.
So the software, will that run on our existing hardware and infrastructure, or is this
cloud-based?
Part of the hardware and infrastructure upgrade previously discussed?
So, there's a lot of synergy between the requests, but this specific software is primarily a cloud-based software as a service offering. So it won't burden or cause additional burden on our server infrastructure, but it will require some additional adjustments and enhancements in terms of our network and internet access capabilities.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments from the committee? All right, I think that concludes that section. All right, thank you, Harry. Anything else that you want to add at this point?
No, I mean, in terms of, in terms of this request, again, it does affect a number of departments in terms of, licensing, permitting, Board of Health, in terms of inspections and record keeping. Again, it increases our abilities around data interoperability and data sharing. It gives a tool in which the DPW, which does have such a great handle on in terms of GIS, right? It gives access to that data to other departments that could benefit it, but it also creates a integrated source for additional data. So as permits are being pulled, that information can then too flow into GIS maps, which can be used by planning to look at development trends and things like that. And when there are other issues in terms of creating licensing, you can see that automatically. So if the Board of Health has maybe identified some areas of concerns with a business in town, when that license comes up for renewal, it can flow right into that license renewal and say, here are the violations that have happened, whether that's Board of Health or other licensing or building code violations. It allows that data to flow seamlessly. The last piece is transparency. Having all of this data in a system which is easily reported out and allows us to share information with the public. One of the things that you'll see that's in the works is a new website and web presence offering for the town, which will include some substantial resources around economic development. So this will likely also be an authoritative source for data to share out to people looking to do business here in Foxboro and move to Foxboro.
Chris, did you have any further comments?
The only one other question I would think, so I don't know if Foxboro has enacted it here, but many communities have enacted local option to withhold permitting and licensing for non-payment of taxes or non-payment of actually any fees that are owed to the town. So I would assume that data interoperability would get a lot easier by implementing this software, as opposed to having it being a manual process where the applicant or an individual from the Board of Health or the Board of Selectmen would have to come to the Treasurer Collector's office and make that inquiry.
So obviously, this is a pretty powerful tool in terms of the Treasurer Collector's office, in terms of communicating to that department when people do owe monies to the town. And we're able to redirect people that are looking maybe for a building permit or a license renewal to the treasurer's office to take care of any unpaid monies that are due to the town. As you mentioned, sometimes we have limited opportunities to collect those funds, and then having this ability to share this information definitely makes that much easier.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments from the committee? All right, thank you.
We'll say that,
You're going to stay with the, you're going to stay for the next item?
yep, I will say that, just lastly too, that this amount of money is in consideration of several offsets that we've taken from existing funds in terms of maintenance that we're paying for software and other products that
So
this would be.
other items will not be funded because of that?
Correct.
Very good. Thank you. All right. Public safety?
It's the star of the day.
Can I just have 30 seconds to make a little...
Sure, go ahead. Thank you. All right, so we have the public safety item, and it's safety cameras. Who's going to address that issue?
So I'll start here, and then both Mike and Tom can speak more specifically to their operational needs in terms of the building. So the public safety building, I believe, was put into service in 2007. Currently, the security and building access controls and surveillance equipment is approximately 15 years old in that building. There's been quite a few advancements in technology in this area. We've had the equipment under a maintenance agreement, but again, this equipment has now become obsolete, and maintenance is no longer available to us. In addition to the equipment being obsolete and needing to be replaced and no longer serviceable, there are additional operational needs that have been identified over the years, and the age of the equipment have been prohibitive in terms of addressing those specific needs. I know Mike will speak to these a little bit as well, but for instance, adding additional cameras to the system, we're unable to do that. And then in terms of the quality of the recording, right, so the rate in which, and level in which we're able to record is very, very, very low, and I'm not sure how to even describe it to you. But I will tell you, it is very difficult during playback, even for events that happen directly in front of a camera, to sometimes distinguish, small or overt type movements or things that are happening. There's some substantial questions in terms of liability and risk mitigation to the town. Some of the areas we're looking to make improvements in are high liability areas, such as booking and transport, where people are getting in and out of vehicles. Other issues as well being operationally, being able to see if entrances are open or closed. I know the cameras are used to verify garage doors and vehicle processing areas being open or closed, which is done from the communications areas to allow, for instance, fire trucks or ambulances going to calls, to have those doors closed to secure the building. We've had an article for security in the CIP budget request for several years. The request has morphed a little bit, as it started in as an additional component to the system that was originally at public safety to provide enhanced security throughout the town. You know, there was a conversation about the commons and the light poles. And one of the original thoughts was to be able to provide, you know, security-type cameras, to be able to monitor crowd control and traffic and things during large events and during certain times of the year. This equipment not only will replace and provide existing and expanded operational, provide an operational service to the Joint Public Safety Building, but will also allow both police and fire to expand the use of cameras throughout the town, whether it's to keep an eye on, for instance, this property that we spoke of earlier, the Lane Street or the Commons as well.
So on the police side, just before I start, just take the idea that we're talking about a system that's 17 years old. So take everything in your house, everything you own that's electronic, and assume when we talk about the system, that's how old it is. So as a, so that's the platform to build off of. So as a police department, we're obligated to have the proper level of transparency and build within the community. We have to have this information. We can't say, oh, we didn't have it, our technology is insufficient. We have an obligation to conduct proper investigations for citizen complaints and civil claims that arise. When they happen, they often involve prisoner illness, injury, or death. A CCTV system is the key ingredient to ensuring the proper handling of prisoners and being able to combat false claims of the mistreatment of people in our custody. In 2018, we housed 554 custodies. 2017, 595. The majority of these that we're seeing are alcohol and drug-related custodies as well, which is another high-risk population that we deal with. In regards to our property room, we handle cash, drugs, guns, and critical evidence like rape kits, and have strict rules for the handling and storage of items with evidentiary value. Cameras are the key to ensuring the integrity of the evidence in the property system, and without our ability to sustain that, the criminal prosecution is completely compromised. We just recently had a full audit of every single piece of property in our property room last week in regards to moving toward accreditation, and we have shortcomings. Our DVR capability is we're looking at 17 days. That's our window. We have 17 days of recording capability, and after that, it's gone. Property rooms statewide designate certain cameras in their gun rooms, in their drug rooms, up to 4 years. So that way they know exactly, number one, who went in the room, and then what transpired in that room. As we have a timeline with statute of limitations as we move property. So we could keep property up to 6 years, depending on the case and appeals. We also have recently did an outside audit with our Gillette Stadium custodies. We brought in the federal marshals, the Department of Corrections, the Norfolk County Sheriffs, and Plymouth County to review our entire custody process. They reviewed it, how we bring people up at Gillette Stadium, how we bring them down to the PD, and how we release. Upon that assessment, it determined that that process is cease and desist because it's not meeting the criteria. Our custodies were being touched by probably 14 or 15 different interactions before they were released. So at the end of last year, we started a new system where all the custodies occur up at Gillette Stadium, come right down to the police department, right from the start. And with that, we have to review our camera system and what we have. Currently, we run 2 cameras in our Sallyport, one on opposite sides. As Aaron said, the ability to actually see people's face, their conditions, we can't do it. That's just looking at it live. When we go to the recording version, it's even worse. It's literally like Minecraft. We've had situations where people, when we open the doors, they throw themselves out, and we can't capture that. We can't capture what condition they were in. We can't capture what condition they were after. We also can't actually capture the end of the doors because we have no cameras there. So that is definitely an issue that has to be addressed townwide, like for the police department, like a liability issue. We also have been, there's been a change And we're seeing more and more of this, of our ability to comply with the legal process. It's becoming commonplace now that defense attorneys issue preservation orders requiring that the police store video of their clients being interviewed in the police station or booked for crimes like operating under the influence of alcohol. The evidence might demonstrate how the defendant was treated or whether a confession was voluntary or a product of coercion. The video might reveal critical information about the suspect's balance or the administrator of the breathalyzer test, which could be a key to their defense. We cannot comply currently with most of these preservation orders that come from the courts because we physically are incapable. We don't get them until after the 17 days, and it's gone. And not where we should be, for sure. We also, a new system would reduce liability for injured on duty and third-party claims. We have to defend against slip and falls in the PD, snow and ice. We also have to, the police station is a essential drop-off for a probate custody exchange. And now it's also the safe haven for third-party internet transactions. Everybody goes to the police department, they know there's cameras there, they feel it's safe. If anything arises after the fact, whether it be a child custody issue or probate violation, we get the requests a month later, and we have no video of it, even though it happened in our parking lot. So, with all of those challenges, I just, that's a summary of where we're at right now with this system. Not alone that it's on a weekly or daily basis, that there's some shortcomings, that there's a problem with it, it's not working. We do have a service contract that we pay a substantial amount of money for each year, and this proposal would eliminate that money because we would be getting a 5-year service plan with it. And that service plan only covers the cost of labor, no parts.
Which with the current system we have, as you've heard Lieutenant Grace explain, is not meeting our daily operational or security needs. A new system, again, would come with a maintenance plan, which would provide comprehensive service to the system. So we would experience some offset there.
So the request is for $160,000, and is this strictly for the police department?
No, so our legal aspect is different than the PD, obviously. We have blind zones in the back of the station. It's been like that since the day we moved in. It was never rectified back then. It has become a concern in the past. We've looked at adding cameras. Recently, Chief Hatfield looked to add a camera in the back of the station, and he got from the vendor of the system was almost $40,000 for one camera. And so just looking at that aspect, same thing like the lieutenant mentioned about slips and falls and things like that, as we all well know after these last storms, there are places in the back rear apparatus area. So we don't have cameras inside our station. There is one camera in the back hallway by the generator that comes in, but that's just takes a look at that one door, but we don't have the amount of cameras at the PD side on their side. But we really need them on the outside. We have people will drive up to the front apparatus with medicals. We've had patients and people looking for help coming to the back side of the station, thinking that there's an access point, and there isn't. We don't even have a way to somebody to buzz in to let them know that they're at our back door. There's nothing there to let anybody know that that isn't an entrance. So that's where we're looking at, is trying to improve on the system and some of the shortcomings from 2007, and we didn't really know back then anyways. This was our first brand new building, is just trying to build on that and rectify the issues that we have.
Included in this proposal, it's not only cameras that are used operationally and for security, but it's also an upgrade to the building's proximity security and card access system. It also provides enhanced capabilities around video intercoms that are will strategically be upgraded and installed around the station, so when people do come to some of these doors, that they're able to push a button and that they're able to get connected via audio and video to somebody that can either facilitate getting them to the correct place or get assistance to them. The current card access and security system, which serves, again, both as a physical security measure, but also is an operational piece to both police and fire, again, secures and keeps data around access to evidence storage and other sensitive areas as well. And that system, too, is currently unsupported by the software manufacturer and requires the continued support of obsolete hardware, which we're not able to continue to repair and replace. So this is a comprehensive building security proposal and operational needs proposal. It's not just simply security cameras, but it's all of the pieces that go with that. And then again, through the intermunicipal technology department support offering, there's been a concerted effort to standardize technology throughout town. This proposal will also, again, allow the police department to increase capabilities around providing security and surveillance of town buildings, including school buildings as well, and integration into those systems, giving them enhanced access to monitor town assets that are unmonitored, quite a bit through the night hours, and have things like alarms that drive their attention, that maybe there's a vehicle in an area that we wouldn't expect a vehicle to be, maybe in the rear of a field or a school at 2 a.m, so that they could be alerted that there may be somebody in need of assistance.
Thank you. Questions from the committee?
Is this system web-based, and is it scalable?
So this system would be hosted on a private cloud. So it does provide web capabilities, but it's not in the public cloud. I just want to draw.
I mean, it would be all password protected and on a private network.
Correct.
But it's not technically hardwired.
It is a hardwired system.
In the individual system through the network.
It's a internet protocol based system. So it's not using analog video technology or RF, technology or digital signaling. It's using IP, a computer network protocol for communications.
Right, and it's scalable. You'll be able to add as you go.
Correct. So we looked at a number of different options in terms of this system, including using a digital hybrid type solution that could use existing coax cabling. The problem with those are that it's difficult to find equipment manufacturers that are recognized throughout the industry in terms of being able to provide the level of reliability we need to do that. Furthermore, we kind of felt like that was, at the end of our evaluation, we determined that was really kind of like kicking the can down the road, that we would make a substantial investment in a solution that would not, in the long run, we would not be able to leverage for future upgrades and advancements. Yeah. So this is a complete rip and replace of the system.
How many cameras are you talking about?
This proposal it's probably upwards of 80 cameras in the first, in this initial phase of the proposal. The system is infinitely scalable in terms of the way that it's implemented. It's modular, and we can continue to add.
So you talked about schools. Where else would you put these cameras?
Well, that's kind of a different.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
This is just for the building itself.
This is
just
That's
for the
80
building.
just for the building?
correct.
Okay.
The technology is.
It sounds like a lot of cameras, but as as Lieutenant Grace was sharing with you, they have quite a bit of requirements. So, for instance, in terms of cells, custody, areas there. There's
8, 12, 15, we probably have 17 cell cameras. And then every area of the cell block cannot have a blind spot. So every path, cross path, and then there has to be a view from 2 different sides, because you have to be able to see the front of the people, and you have to see the back of the people.
specifically these high liability areas. We did an analysis of the vehicle transport area. It's a double bay garage. So when it's empty, it's quite easy to cover with 2 cameras, and I think that's probably what led to the original design in terms of 2 cameras, being installed, one on each corner, opposing corners. But when you pull 2 vehicles into the garage, the 2 cameras gets you about 1/20th of what you need to see, because you need to see on each side of the vehicle, each end of the vehicle, and in between the vehicles.
And those were cruisers back then. Now you have SUVs and vans.
Transport vans. And you can see, so you're not getting any coverage from these 2 cameras. So this 2 vehicle transport area requires upwards of 7 to 8 cameras just to adequately cover this area. And again, this being one of the highest liability areas in terms of.
Okay, so are you proposing to put cameras anywhere else besides that?
No, so this system.
Public safety buildings.
Okay, I just thought you had
You
said
can-
around, I thought you used the phrase around town, so I.
So this.
Expandable to
Yep,
that point.
it's expandable. So I know this item's been carried for a number of years in CIP, and I know originally, when it was proposed, it was used, one of the prospective uses of the system which was being proposed was to be able to provide additional security and video surveillance to enhance safety throughout the town. So I wanted to just communicate that not only is this system, it's going to meet the current and future needs of police and fire, but also allow for the ability, to integrate with other systems here at Town Hall. So we have a system here that was put in when this building was built, but we don't have abilities to really integrate it into what police and fire are doing. We'll be able to
What's
to
happening
integrate
in
that.
a lot of communities is that without some sort of a central IT operation, is that individual departments will buy software and IT equipment that won't be interoperable with other equipment throughout the town. So what they've done is develop a philosophy and sort of a standard that whatever we do is expandable beyond one location into other locations. One of the classic examples we had during the past year was that there was one department that was looking to try and acquire a software capability just to do one specific aspect of what they do, but it wasn't connected to anything else. So we had that conversation, a very extensive conversation about it, and even though it made their life easier for one specific function, it didn't have any really beyond expansive capabilities. So we looked beyond that to find a better solution that had more capabilities and was much more consistent with the philosophy that's with the department. So what Aaron is saying is that whatever they're buying has the capability to be connected elsewhere to other departments. So they're not just one-offs,
Right.
if you will.
Okay, yep.
And the school department's currently using this
Correct. It's a
system already.
It's a system that integrates with the system we use at both the schools and in other municipal buildings as well. And in terms of the ability to deploy cameras, to municipal areas of the community, I think we heard of a business use case earlier today where there's a municipal property where there's some liability in terms of trespassing and damage. This system would allow the police department to do that. Again, it's just a simple example of another use case at is it Uptown? I don't want to make sure I get this right. So Uptown here.
Yes. That's the new standard today.
No, that's always been the standard.
I think you know, I've experienced it in the afternoon during the commute, that sometimes the traffic and the congestion there can get problematic, and there can be, you know, quite a bit of delays. Sometimes it's caused by a disabled vehicle or things like that. That may be an area where a camera could be deployed, in which the police department, you know, would be able to be aware.
Track it and deploy resources to help it.
And fire department as well, in terms of the dispatch process, if they're sending an ambulance to a call, to be able to advise that crew that maybe there's a quarter-mile backup, or, you know, that there's a disabled vehicle, you know, in that area, which is difficult for emergency vehicles to navigate.
So the time being 10:15, we are at the conclusion of your time frame. Anybody else have any further comments or questions? All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Public Works and Streets Reconstruction. Chris Gallagher.
Bob's gonna come up too.
Director Hill is here, so we're gonna leave it that way. Great, thanks. Yeah, I think he knows, right?
Thanks.
Well known. Oh, thank you. Well. Good, how are you?
Hi, Bob, how are you? You have a problem with this?
That's the new way to salt. You just put it in the truck and it just falls right out.
How many times we have this conversation about vehicles that, you know, we're replacing good vehicles? Well.
Yeah. Now you can see it.
That was, picture tells 1,000 words.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah. All right. All right, you're on.
All right. I think the first thing we have is a vehicle replacement. It would be a 1-ton dump truck. It's replacing a 2008 Chevy Silverado, also a 1-ton dump truck. The first two pictures that I just handed out, I think speak to why we're looking to replace the truck. The body is rusted through. It's now 10 years old. By the time we get this new truck, it will be another year older, and at that point in time may not be operable, based on the condition of the truck.
So this is not a dump body. It's listed as a dump body on our list here, but it is actually the 1-ton dump, right?
Yes, so this would be, yes, so this is a 1-ton 3,500 pickup with plow.
And that's $69,000?
That's $60,000.
$60,000, okay. Okay,
The body is going to be just the body, but for a different truck.
okay, very good. But that is the Silverado, correct?
Yes, that's replacing the Chevy Silverado.
Very good, thank you. All right.
All right, next we have a street sweeper. With the new MS4 permit, stormwater permit that has come out and has finally been released and in effect this year, we are required to sweep our streets twice a year. We currently have a 2004 sweeper, which we bought 4 years ago used. And what we found is that it's been great. We've been able to use it and do what we're required to do. However, I'd say once a week it's in the garage getting repaired, which gets costly. So what we've actually done is we've reached out to one of the vendors and asked for a 5-year lease to own. So instead of asking for $260,000 in one lump, we're gonna look for $55,000 per year for the next 5 years. So the benefit of that is it includes a 5-year warranty where any repairs on that machine are done by the vendor. So with the exception of replacing the brooms, which are just a wear-out item, everything else is covered. So there'll be minimal expense. Where the current machine we have, we're putting a lot of money into it, repairing belts, repairing the different items that have worn down. I mean, the one we have is 14 years old, going on 15. So we thought a lease to own is a good option for us.
And then at the end of the 5 years, we'll own it, and we can decide if it's time to trade it in or keep going with it at that point in time. So we're looking at $55,000 a year, and we're planning on a 5-year lease for that.
This piece of equipment that Chris is talking about is the highest maintenance piece of equipment in public works. Sweepers wear out very quickly. It's a much better idea to lease and maintain than it is to buy and fix.
So will they actually come to your garage to repair it, or do you have to send it out?
It depends on what it is. If it's something that can be done in our shop, then they'll come to us. If it's something that, needs their special equipment, then we'll bring it to them. My thought on this is that, one, we're required to sweep our streets. We could give that to a contractor. We have done that in the past. The price of doing that is a lot more than what this lease would be, and doing it in-house. I also think that towns should have a street sweeper.
Yeah.
As the downtown gets built out, my personal opinion, and there are a lot of towns that do it, that street sweeper should be out weekly. There are a lot of towns that go out every morning with that street sweeper and sweep their downtowns. Or in our case, our uptown.
Those that do have sweepers, it's a noticeable difference. So I couldn't agree more, actually.
So I think that's something that we would certainly add to. Right now, the one we have, it just doesn't work for that. It's not, when we get it up and running, it's up and running, but to keep it going every week is tough.
All right, the mower?
So just $30,000 for a lawnmower. Seems like a lot, but in reality, it's probably one of our less expensive lawnmowers that we're looking to replace. Some of the mowers we have are up to $100,000. So lawnmowers used on all the fields around town, on the common, on different islands and roadside, mowing throughout town, and also around the town buildings. So, again, an older mower, we've limped it along as it can. It's actually sitting in the garage, inoperable at the moment. So.
It'll go to auction. We auction the old stuff off now instead of trading it in, because we don't get anything for trades.
Is this a dedicated mower as opposed to like a lawn tractor that would have attachments on it?
It is a dedicated mower.
It's a dedicated mower.
Which gets used from probably April vacation straight through until Thanksgiving.
Sure.
And they're out.
All the time.
They're out 5 days a week.
They are out a lot.
Do you get bigger bang for your buck if you were to consider something, just because we did this in Bellingham, but a Kubota, lawn tractor that you could add?
We have one.
We have a couple of those.
Yeah. This is one of those hydraulic mowers that you can do tight spots with.
This is one the guy gets, almost
Yeah.
like a golf course type
Yeah.
situation where he gets up and he's got the two-hand levers.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Other questions from the committee?
So how many mowers do you have, or equipment to mow?
We probably have half a dozen lawnmowers, ranging from, like I said, the biggest one is a $100,000 lawnmower. It's got a 16-foot wingspan. So the side has 2 decks on the side that actually fold up when it's driving around. This is, I think, a 60-inch mower, so it's a 5-foot deck. Each has different uses, but a lot of times they're getting used, on the same field at the same time.
Sure, okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Grass sweeper?
So to go along with the lawnmower, we're looking to add a piece of equipment to actually clean the fields after we mow them. Some of the fields have been just left in place. The clippings just get left as they're cut. A lot of the mowers have bag attachments where we collect them, drive to the truck, dump them in the truck, and then it goes somewhere else. Some of the fields we've found various spots off the edge near the trees, and kind of, put the grass clippings, off the side to compost. With EPA and DEP stormwater regulations coming out and just people not liking grass clippings in certain spots, we really have to clean the fields when we're done mowing them. So that 16-foot lawnmower, it can cut the field, but then we need to actually go pick up the grass clippings, and bring them down to the compost dump, which is the appropriate place for those clippings. So that's $40,000. Again, it'll be used on all the athletic fields and then some of the other various buildings throughout town.
So
good.
can I ask a question on that? The grass clippings getting into the stormwater,
Yep,
is that a problem of clogging, or is that a problem of like the chemicals that are on the grass, or?
both.
Both?
Both. And that's one of the things that we, through our MS4 permit, have to do public education-wise, is to let the residents and the public know, look, I've seen a lot of people drive around town, you can see the people that just, they don't bag it, and it just gets blown right out into the street, and the next time it rains, it ends up in the catch basin. So it's an issue with the chemicals that are on it, as well as clogging the system.
Okay, thanks.
Hey, any other questions about that? The dump body?
So we're looking for $69,000. This is to replace a body on a 2005 International six-wheel dump truck. The body itself, you can see some of the pictures, the last two pictures that I included are showing some of the rust starting to come through. The tailgate, as well as some of the pinholes that on the tailgate are starting to rust through. As well as this body, the existing body has a built-in sander, which kind of limits its use. You can plate it, you can do different things, but it really causes issues if you're using it for something other than salt. So the body we would get would just be a standard body and allow for a slide-in sander so that we can continue to use it for winter operations. But then we can use it for hauling when we're digging. We do co-share trucks with the water department, so if they're out on a dig and they need a second dump truck, we do send highway trucks over to help them out as well, so that they're not buying stuff that we have that's in the garage. So this would just be a replacement of the body itself.
In terms of the pictures that you sent out, is that the last picture?
The second two.
Second
Yeah,
two.
The first two are the smaller
Yeah, you can
trucks.
see it pretty good.
The third and fourth picture are the larger body truck.
There's one there. And you can see the tailgate starting to go. And, let's see the next one.
Some of the rust holes on the.
Okay. And what year is that?
That's a 2005 body.
But it's
2005.
that's a diesel, a big heavy diesel, that's a 5-ton, and it's a good truck, so.
So it's, what we've been able to do is, as we've been auctioning off trucks, if a certain part of that truck is in good condition, we will pull it
take it.
off and swap the body. We actually just did one this past year. We had an old truck 5 that was going out for auction. The body was in better shape than truck 9, so we pulled the body off, swapped it, put the worst body on the truck we were getting rid of. So we do try to do that when possible. Unfortunately, there's no other truck we can do that with right now.
Okay. Other questions, comments from the committee? All right. Now, are you going to talk about street improvements, or are you going to move on to?
No, we can do those two now.
Okay.
So we have two sources of funding for our pavement management program.
For the committee, it's the last item on the list, the summary list. You'll see total roads, total highway improvements and fund request of $888,777. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
So we have two funding sources. Both have been fairly consistent over the last few years. The state provides Chapter 90 funding, which they allocate to each town within the state. We are slated this year, we just got our official letter that we're gonna get $649,876,000.
Same as last year.
So slightly less than the
650.
650. And the other source of funding is the meals tax money. Looks like we're just shy of $240,000 for that this upcoming year. So it's a healthy budget for roads. We could always use more. And there's been a lot of work by the different organizations, MMA, APWA, and some of the other organizations to push the state to increase that funding for the Chapter 90. There's been a lot of studies that have been done. Foxboro could certainly benefit from an increase. You know, the meals tax really has helped out over the last 5 years to bring our roads up to a good standard. I think the increase that we've made over the last 5 years, 7 years since Roger's been here, is well seen. We've done not only the main roads, but we've done a lot of the subdivision roads that have been neglected for 40-plus years.
It might help, Chris, if you could talk about some of the projects that are slated for this year.
Sure. So, we're doing 2 big neighborhoods this year, down off of South Street and 106. Paula Lane, Gary, Mary, that neighborhood, we're gonna do with the Cape Seal process. We've been using that in various portions around town. The first one that went down was up in Dudley Estates, 6 years ago now.
Yeah.
And it's held up fairly well.
Almost 7, Chris.
Yeah.
7 winters.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a process where we're not milling the street and putting down new asphalt, but we're doing a stone chip seal and then covering it with a slurry, which provides a smooth riding surface for it. We're doing that in that Paula neighborhood, and then we're going across 106 and doing it in the
Greenview Estates.
Greenview Estates.
Which has 36-foot pavement roads.
Yes, these neighborhoods they have wide streets, which if you're gonna mill and pave them, you're gonna spend a lot of money to do that. So this process allows us to get those 2 neighborhoods in and without breaking the budget. So 2 of the other big projects that we're gonna do, we will tackle Mechanic Street this year. We have just finished, actually, they worked through most of the winter, the water services and the water main work on Mechanic Street. So we will mill and pave that road from Oak Street straight through to the lights at Chestnut Street.
Including the intersection with
Including the
Oak Street.
intersection, which needs some regrading.
Yeah.
So we will do that as part of this project. And Beach Street. We have a couple months left of work first thing in the spring on Beach Street for again, the water main work that we're doing over there. And then in the fall, we're gonna do a cold-in-place recycling process where they come in and they actually mill the existing asphalt, all of it. So instead of taking just the top 1.5 inches, they're gonna mill all of it at the same time, and they actually place it right back down in one process, adding some things to it.
And you can give it to the traffic about an hour after it's laid, so.
And then once that cold-in-place process is complete, you give it a couple of weeks to settle out, and then you actually top it. We will top it with an 1.5 inches of asphalt.
Super pave.
Super pave. So Beach Street and Mechanic, I know everybody thinks there's speed bumps on Mechanic Street. Those will go away, and Beach Street in of itself is, traffic calming at its finest.
There's no question about that.
So we will address both of those this
And
year.
then the other big project, we just opened bids on yesterday, the day before yesterday.
Thursday, yep.
And the roundabout came in at $930,000. And that's good because it's within the grant and we don't have to use town money on it. And that'll start work as soon as the weather allows.
Great. All right, is that it?
I think that's it.
There's a couple other little jobs that we gotta get done this year. When we finish the sewer job on Market Street, we know we need to put a new water main on Centennial Street, which is gonna happen. And when we get done with that, we're gonna redo the neighborhood with paving. But that'll be at the end of the year if we can get it all done, because we have a big load of work this year.
Yeah, the last thing is that we've been working on a pavement management program in town for a number of years now, which I really appreciate the work that you guys do on that. And you bring an outside person in to review the roads.
Correct.
And what's the latest indication of the condition of our roads townwide now at this point?
I think the last. 83, close to 84.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's actually very good.
Which is a significant improvement from where we were.
Right.
As well as if you look from town to town throughout the state, we're definitely on the higher end of that rating throughout the state.
And at some point, we've done a lot of major reconstruction of roads. Beach, of course, is one of the major last ones, and some of the others. But at what point does it become more of a ongoing maintenance point?
Streets are tough. Life expectancy of new asphalt is about 15 years before you're milling and paving it. So even Beach Street, I would expect Beach Street will be looking at in 15 to 20 years. That'll be back on the list. So with 100 miles of road in town, 10 to 12 year life expectancy on a lot of the processes that we're using, we really need to be addressing 10 miles per year to try to keep up with it. A lot of it is preventive maintenance. You do your crack sealing. You can do these surface treatments, which will hold it together. But we're in a good spot, and once we tackle some of these big projects this year, it'll be a maintenance, but it's going to be continuous. We're always going to be working on the roads.
So it's fair to say that $900 to $1 million each year is a ongoing need for maintenance of the roads.
Correct.
Just to keep them in the standard where they are.
Correct. Correct.
And they've obviously come a long way from where they were, but to maintain them in the condition that they are requires that annual investment.
Right. Right. And if the state, comes through and at some point in time, puts more money into the Chapter 90 funds, then we can address some of the other issues. The sidewalks are always a big issue. That's one thing that just always gets neglected. And we're working on a different program to do the Complete Streets program. We have a prioritization list that has been put together that we're probably going to share with the Planning Board and the Board of Selectmen, and then actually start applying for grant funding for some of those projects. So they'll fund for up to $400,000 per project. Once you get the funding, project's complete, you can go right back and apply again. So we're working on that. Probably the first round of funding will be this spring.
Oh, and I don't want to forget, we have mitigation money from the Hanover project that we're going to use to do Fisher Street and South High Street and some other neighborhood improvements down there, like screening and things like that. We've been working with the neighbors. I'm also looking, if it's feasible, to put a sidewalk on South High. The layout's there, but the problem is there's some really, really big trees there that are going to be an issue. And I'm not sure we're going to be able to get around the trees and stay on town property. So that's a question that's going to have to go before the neighbors. And if the neighbors really want a sidewalk, I think we can do one, but it's going to be at the cost of taking out a couple of big trees.
Yeah, Chris, can you just explain the Cape Seal process? Because it's not a 1 or 2 day process.
Sure.
It's a fairly lengthy process.
Sure.
And I know what's gonna happen. You guys are gonna start, and then we're gonna get phone calls. You guys are gonna get phone calls about, they started, they stopped, when are they gonna finish?
So with Cape Seal, actually, in those two neighborhoods, the first thing you like to do is crack seal and then level. So when you level, you're putting asphalt in the low spots, anything that's settled out, any wheel ruts, to try to get the profile of the road back to where it needs to be, with a crown in the middle and everything sloping off to the gutters.
Then you got to do the basins.
Yep, do all the catch basins, make sure all the drainage structures, in Greenview, there's sewer manholes, make sure all those structures are rebuilt. A lot of times the brick underneath the casting deteriorates, falls apart, the cement deteriorates. So we actually pull all those structures off, make sure they're rebuilt so they're solid for the next 20 to 30 years. The road then gets a chip seal, which is small stone. They actually put down a layer of hot emulsion, and that stone adheres to that hot emulsion. The road is swept over a period of 2 to 3 weeks. A lot of the stones that are loose that aren't adhered fully will come loose. We'll sweep it again, and then it gets a slurry, a coating on top, which is an asphalt cement, Portland cement mixture, and that gives the smooth riding surface.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great process.
Yeah.
But it's lengthy.
It is.
I would suggest in the notice that you send out to the
Yeah.
residents, that you actually put the process in there.
Sure.
I think you'll save yourself
Yeah.
some phone calls.
Yeah, the big thing with that is when that emulsion goes down, when that slurry goes down on top of the stone, it takes a while. It's a cement-based product. It takes a while to cure. It could be, depending on the weather, it could be an hour, or it could be, 4.
And you can't drive on it.
So you can't drive on it.
Yep.
So that is something that, we try to get our notices out ahead of time and make sure that everybody's aware of when we're gonna be in there. Obviously, most schedule with asphalt work and road work is weather dependent, so we always throw that in the notice as well. We'll make sure that we address that prior to going into those neighborhoods.
Yeah, maybe we can get it up on the town website too.
Yeah.
It's a product that amazes me in how durable it is. It's really durable.
Other questions, comments from the committee? All right, thank you very much, Chris.
All right.
All right, Bob?
Alrighty.
On to water and sewer, right?
Yep.
Yep. So, just one thing. Which part do you think the trucks goes at, before or after?
We'll do that at the end.
Okay.
So if you want to start, do system improvements first.
Right. So the first one we have is $200,000 worth of system improvements. This is our asset management program of all of our equipment. It includes things like replacing fire hydrants, valves in the road that need fixing. We have small connections like we did from Sherwood to Beach, Willis to North.
Closing dead ends.
Yes, what we try to do is, part of Mass DEP's guidance is to eliminate as many dead ends as possible. Right now, we have about 240 of them. So when we see a spot where with a couple of 100 feet of pipe, we can actually eliminate them. That's what we go for, because it makes extra redundancy for supplying water to the neighborhood, and it's also much better for fire protection.
And water quality.
And water quality, yeah. And in system improvements, we also have, there are security features that we're required to put in, alarm systems, chemical feed equipment, just any general thing that's needed to make something better.
Well replacement?
Okay, this one really should say well redevelopment, because like Sue probably noticed in our town warrant article, we have money for building brand new wells. This is more a program to clean existing wells, which we have 13 of, and it's maintenance on the new wells that are coming. In time, as water is drawn through the aquifer material right near the well, it tends to form a crust and plug up. And this is a physical and chemical process that removes the impediment to the water flowing into the well. Right now, what we've noticed, because we need a combination of the replacement wells and more cleaning, our capacity is about 1/3 of what each well can actually was designed to do. So we've lost quite a bit of capacity, and this is the long-term program to get that back and maintain it.
Okay. Questions? Moving on to water meters.
Okay, water meters. We have $200,000 for replacement of meters. The industry standard, if we just look at the typical 5/8 by 3/4 meter that's in the houses, is replacement every 10 years. We are behind on that. Right now, we have roughly 2,000 meters that need to be changed. So this appropriation will actually cover about 865 of them. So there's more work for future years, but this is about the chunk that we know we can handle in this current year coming.
As I recollect, though, didn't you include some of this in the operating budget, too?
There's, in the operating budget, there is some they're like different larger meters. There's many different sizes of meters.
Is that meter maintenance, or is that meter replacement?
I believe in the operating budget is meter maintenance, which is for the larger 8 to 10-inch meters at the sources and treatment plants themselves.
Very good. Question? Parallel tank design?
All right, currently we have on Dudley Hill, the Hill Street Reservoir, which is a 3 million gallon tank. We've recently had that refurbished and painted. It's currently under asset management, which is an excellent thing. The problem is we're already due to have this tank drained, inspected, and checked out on the inside. The problem is until we get another tank at that location, which will allow us to remove that tank from service as well as provide additional pressure and volume for the town, we cannot remove this tank from service. It's just physically impossible. So this is part of the long-term plan. It's the engineering to design, which will probably be a 2 million gallon hydro pillar. So instead of a tank that starts from the ground and goes all the way up, it'll be more like the one at Patriot Place where you have a concrete base and then the big tank on top of it. That way you have more water at the elevation that you need to maintain pressure. Because pressure is solely based on the elevation of the water in storage, not how much is in storage. So this will be the design for that.
That's all it is. It's just getting started on a program to replace, to add a tank up there. We already have the land for it. It's right adjacent to the existing reservoir. So,
Because in the future, the actual tank construction will probably be, it's estimated somewhere in the 5 to 6 million range.
that's
That'll
going to be a
different.
separate bond issue sometime
Yeah.
in the future.
So this tank actually replaces
Main Street.
the Main Street tank. There's an older water tank, 1938 tank that still sits off of Main Street. When we increased the size of the water main on Main Street, we were able to take that offline, and it still feeds pressure appropriately over on that side of town. But that tank, having a second tank is necessary in order to do maintenance on these.
And that tank is unrehabable.
So when you decommission that tank, do you remove it?
Yeah.
Take it out?
Yes.
demolish it?
They're in the process of trying to figure that out this year.
We're going to put it out, and we'll probably get a bid to take it down for the steel.
And part of the issue there is dealing with ours and Mass DOT communication equipment that's on that
On
tower.
that tank, yeah.
Okay, process logic controllers.
The exciting stuff.
There they are.
I was so excited, I made some pictures. So, what you heard earlier today, partly in the schools when they were talking about computer equipment has certain lifespans, in the treatment facilities themselves are these industrial computers, for lack of a better word. They're the nerve center of the facility. It contains the program and the connections to every piece of equipment, every monitor, every valve. It has the sequencing of how the plant runs. Currently, this type of equipment, which is in 7 of our locations, is no longer manufactured. You cannot buy it. It's not supported. So if we're taking the preemptive strike of replacing it with new and current equipment, which if you see on some of the other pages, there's an awful lot of hard wires that have to be removed. There's thousands of them. So it's a matter of removing the equipment, putting in the new one, translating the program, because now the language is different from what it was to what it is, and actually get them going. The downside, if we do not do this and the equipment fails, that treatment plant's offline. We just can't run. So that's why we're doing that one.
Okay.
All right. Do you have the $190,000 truck?
Yeah, so this morning I passed out a revision
Revised,
to the summary along with the 2 additional requests. They were already part of the plan. It was an oversight on my part, but you have a request for a box truck.
Yeah.
And 2 utility vans?
2 utility trucks.
2
Yeah.
utility trucks, sorry.
Yeah.
So if we start with the box truck, this vehicle, it's similar to a specialized fire department rescue truck that its goal in life is to aid in water main break repairs. It's a truck that it's bigger, it's larger. On board, it has all the hydraulics, air compressors, light towers, workbenches. And part of the important thing is it has heat and air conditioning, because a lot of times you'll notice that main breaks tend to happen when it's extremely cold out. And our staff, when they go on these events, they do not leave till the job's done, because every time it happens, there are folks that no longer have water. So part of the safety involved is if they're out in the, very cold weather for 10, 15 hours in a row, at least there's a place where at a certain time they can get out of the elements and warm up. Because things get very cold when you're standing in the dark all night fixing something wet. And we've seen many other communities have got this type of equipment. It holds everything that they need to do the repairs, all the equipment, all the tools, which, because there's not the need to go back and forth from where they are to say, oh, we need to go get this, it cuts down the repair time. And restoring service as quickly as we can, as safely as we can, is the main goal.
And this replaces a 2003 vehicle that we currently use. The vehicle we currently use is smaller, doesn't have some of the extras that are really essential to that repair and that main work that we do. So it's not an add-on, it is a replacement for something that's now 16 years old. So.
And we'll auction that, and the results will go back into the water enterprise account.
Okay.
Okay, and the last we have is replacing 2 of our older utility body trucks.
What year are those vehicles?
We have a 2005 and a 2007. Please. So one's now 14 years old, the other's 12. So these are small, they're small, they're pickup, we'll probably replace them with a pickup truck. The last 2 trucks that we got, actually they just came in a couple weeks ago, are both utility body trucks. So they have a lot of storage on them. One we've outfitted with plumbing equipment as we go in to do meter repairs and that type of work. That staff has everything on the truck that they need to do that work. These would probably be more utility truck, more pickup trucks. They'll get a toolbox on the back and a plow, and that's pretty much what they'll do, more for driving around town more frequently throughout the day.
And we might mention that the fact that we're getting these water trucks now with plows, and we have got young guys in the department that are operating them, has allowed us to cut down on the number of private plows that we hire. And this most recent storm, I don't think we had very many of them, did we?
No.
Unfortunately, we got so much snow in such a short time that the 1-tons have a tough time pushing it, but they do get it done.
Okay, other questions about the water request?
Does this 1.3 million for the total water, does that fall under the 6% rate increase that you're?
It's all cooked into the rate
that's
study.
all-
It's already,
Yeah.
that's not an additional cost over the 6.
Yeah, it's
It's cooked into
already
that.
figured in.
into-
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
I still like the word formulated better than cooked.
You get really creative with those terms.
I picture water like a big muffin with a lot of things cooked into it.
Yeah, it's like the other day I heard the term unplanned water maintenance instead of a main break.
Fair enough. All right, moving on to sewer.
All right, we have 3 items in sewer. The first is an I&I study and actual repairs of that I&I. So on the sewer, we're mandated every year to look at the system, actually put a camera into the pipes, open the manhole covers, make sure that there's no groundwater coming in, as well as, make sure that there's no cracks in the pipe that's allowing that sewage to leak out. So this is something where, a couple of years ago, we did an I&I study around the downtown Leonard Street area, down to Elm Street through that easement. This would continue that process. We know we have some issues down on Moore Street and Cocassa Street where the sewer is in that area. So we're looking to actually put some cameras in the pipe, and actually we'll end up doing some smoke testing as well. Smoke testing is a process where you actually put smoke into the sewer pipe, and when you look at each house as you go down the street, it should just come out the vent stack in the top of the house. Sometimes people have some pumps that are connected that should not be connected to the sewer system, at which point they'll end up with smoke in their basement. So that's something we coordinate with the fire department, police department, flyer the neighborhoods before we do that. It's just another way to find out what is connected, if there's something connected to the system that shouldn't be connected to the system.
And it's good reason to do these, because for every drop of water that goes through the system, we pay the MFN district for treatment. And if we can take off some of the infiltration, we can save ourselves a little bit of money.
So Chris, how much infiltration do you think you found when you did the downtown study? What was the savings, ballpark?
I'd have to go back and look at that. That was 3 years ago we did that now.
Yeah, almost 4.
Yeah, some of these leaks, while they look small, can really put, I've seen a couple of these manholes. When we did the manholes across the street on Market Street, before that project was finished, there's a 2-inch hole on those manhole covers that are used to lift the structure and put it into place. With the groundwater over there, the water was, like a 2-inch garden hose.
Just continuous.
Yeah.
It doesn't stop.
And I was calculating some of those manholes were probably putting 40,000 gallons a day into the system.
I&I pays dividends.
No, I know. I know that.
I think right now on Moore Street, we're looking at 30,000 gallons a day that we're gonna repair this upcoming season.
And what does that equate to,
Treatment costs?
treatment costs?
Yeah, I really can't tell you that. What's our total bill for, it's 400 and change, right?
Gallons, or $1 million a year.
Yeah.
In treatment costs right now.
And so if you took say it's 20% of that,
Yeah.
20% I&I, that's $200,000.
Yeah. So, I mean, the point is, it's well worth the investment.
Right.
And it's required by MS4 anyway, so.
Who cares about the requirement?
All right, go ahead, well, your next one is?
All right, next one, we have to replace the town engineer's vehicle. I don't know why he thinks he needs a new one, but it's in here.
Who would that guy be?
It's a, currently, it's a 2007 Ford Explorer, going on 12, 13 years old now. Similar to the other 2007 Ford Explorer that gets utilized frequently around town, it's starting to rust out. the undercarriage. Every time they put it on the lift, they look at it and they're like, just put it down, we don't want to see that. Which makes me feel real good driving around town with it. So it's an older truck, it has 130,000 miles on it, just looking to replace that in kind.
We're watching that.
Questions about that? Okay, moving on.
All right, the last thing we have is the SCADA system upgrade. So the water department and the water system has a SCADA system. It allows them to see everything that's happening within the system at all the pumps, at all the treatment plants, the well sites, and control it from a phone or an iPad as well as, a desktop computer. 2 years ago, we put in a dollar amount, I think $80,000, to begin to add the sewer system to the SCADA system as well. This should complete that process. So it will allow us, all of our lift stations, to see when the pumps are running, when they're off, if there's a high flow alarm, high level alarm, it'll actually come through directly on through the SCADA system on a phone. Right now, some of them are alarmed with a little yellow light that flashes on the top of it. So if something's going wrong, the only way you know is if somebody drives by and happens to call them, until it starts bubbling up onto the streets, and then people usually call. So, to bring the sewer system into today's technology, which really SCADA is not a new technology, but it's been around for quite a long time. But we're just trying to bring the town's sewer system into today's technology.
Okay. So I think that's it.
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna break for a few minutes, but I want to just, I appreciate everybody, we're actually ahead of time a little bit, so I appreciate that. So we'll take a few minutes to, 15-minute break, but I just wanted to give the committee and anyone who wants to know where we are in terms of the process here. So we've heard a presentation on close to $4 million worth of capital improvements this morning. Of that amount, though, $2,467,777 is actually funded through water and sewer funds which are available, or through the meals tax and through the Chapter 90 funding. So those more or less have dedicated funding sources to them. So while we heard the presentation on what they are, that's more informational in a sense, because those things really do have funding sources that are dedicated to those individual functions. Clearly, if the committee feels uncomfortable with funding any particular item on that list, you'll have an opportunity to speak to that and address that. And you'll also have an opportunity to rate that as well. With due respect to the 1.5, almost $5 million worth of requests that come under the town and school requests, those come out of what are available funds, mostly free cash, and, which are identified as a funding source for those. There is, like I said, $1.5 million worth of funding, or requests rather, $1,499,213 to be exact. But in terms of funding capability, we only have $996,000, let me see, $996,000 and $700,000. So little less than $1 million available in available funds. So what we're going to have to do is go through and rate the various proposals as they've been presented to the committee this morning. That's something we do every year, and we end up with a situation where some things get funded this year, some things get delayed or postponed or put back into the system for another year. It's not uncommon to see that. So we know that we're going to have to go through a process to identify that, but I think what we want to do is go through, what we typically do is rate them on a scale of 1 to 5. And with 5 being the most required, the highest level of need, based on a number of different considerations. but one being the least, more or less as a want as opposed to a need. Now, with due respect to the 5 level, 5 would be that there is an immediate danger, or there is, or the system is out of, or something has been taken out of service, something that requires immediate response from the town to address it for a liability issue, et cetera. 4, it goes down from there in terms of priority. 3 being it's sort of a neutral request, but it still has some relative need to the town, and it's not just simply a want, but it is something that could be certainly an improvement to the community, and certainly something that we could use operationally. 4 of course being, you know, the next level down from a 5, but certainly a very important need for the community. So we'll go through those and we'll rate them. We'll take a few minutes after we break. We'll come back, we'll start rating them, and then we'll come back to a debate about which items we want to get to. But I think we'll rate the items individually. We'll have Chris do a tabulation of that, right? And then what we'll do is come back and then have a conversation about what we can do about where we are with the overall rating process, and then see what items ultimately do get funded, get recommended for funding for the next fiscal year. Okay? Is everybody clear on that?
Should we rate them now so that during the break he can?
Well, you know, that's actually a good thought. I was going to get to that. If everybody wants to go and do that now, we can do that now, and then give Chris a few minutes to go and then tabulate them. Sure. In the interest of time, we're ahead of schedule right now, but if we want to do that, we can rate them all now and then come back to that. So just to be everybody, so that everybody's clear, the rating scale is 1 to 5. 1 being the least interested, least. With the lowest score, 5 being the highest score, and so obviously the ones with the higher numbers in the end are the ones that will ultimately look towards funding. Okay? And so you'll have a category for each one, Chris, and then you'll have everybody's calculation for each one. Okay?
Which sheet do you want us to put the rating on?
You could do it right on the latest one that was given this morning, because that's the most comprehensive list. All right, so what I would do is go down the left-hand side of the column, or you could do the right if you want, it's up to you, and just list them out accordingly. What I would do is put your name at the top of the list, at the top of the scale, top of the sheet, so that it's clear as to who got what. Who's doing what. We'll do it that way. All right, so we'll start with information systems and go down, and then when you're ready, just let me know. Okay?
Thanks.
Yep. This is the latest one he handed out this morning, which shows all the list of with the 2 vehicles at the very bottom. That was the one that was handed out this morning.
I'm sure I'll find it.
Did you bring?
This is the one I had
you
from
brought?
before.
Okay. Yeah, it's probably missing the 2 vehicles on it. Chris, do you have another copy of the other one you handed out this morning?
Yeah. Pass that down.
Just make it easy. Let me just hand this down. Good. There you go.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Make it easier. Just one other note while you're doing this. If you have an alternative indication for how you'd like to fund something, you can also note that too in your request.
So, I do have a question.
Okay.
Regarding the pending sale of the fire station.
Mm-hmm.
Where do those funds go? Free cash?
That goes back into the general fund. Right. So it wouldn't be. It eventually could fall to free cash, but it's a general. That will be general fund revenue. Okay. But it wouldn't be available for appropriation until it was certified at the end of the year. So we wouldn't see that until next fiscal year. Follow?
Mm-hmm.
system. We've tabulated our scores, and we're at a point now where we'll start discussions over what's been funded and what's not been funded. So, and maybe how we can fund a few more things. So at this point in time, based on the system that we've put in place, a total of $684,000 worth of projects have been funded of the roughly $1.5 million worth of requests. So those things rose to the funding level right away, and those include the joint public safety camera, security cameras, the computer, hardware, software, network upgrades, the passenger buses, the let me see, the all-wheel drive four-wheel pickup replacement, the street sweeper replacement process, or I guess it's a lease, right? Lease payment, and the dump body was funded as well. The Booth Playground was funded, so that will be done this year. So that totals the rest of the items were funded by almost by virtue of default, because there's a dedicated funding source. So those items below the $1.5 million is effectively funded. So what's still to be discussed, because we still have $312,700 versus a funding availability for the remaining projects, and those projects include the information systems and municipal operations software, the town clerk's tabulations. I will note that that rated one of the lowest of all of them at 2.2. The town common electrical system upgrade rated 3.6. The demolition of the state laundry building rated 2.8. So I would say, just on its first glance, I would say the demolition of the laundry building and the town clerk's voting machines are out in terms of consideration for this year right out of the gate. So still in play are the management information systems for the town, the municipal operations software for the town, the electrical system upgrades, the let me see, the copier replacements, the borough school funding is for the sewer connection. We're going to talk about that in a minute, because we think there's another way to address that without having to fund it. So we'll get into that discussion in a second. The other item is it was the street sweeper. I'm sorry, the
grass sweeper.
The grass sweeper.
And the mower.
Yeah, the grass sweeper and the mower.
Both very important.
Okay.
And the historical commission.
And the commission cemeteries, which was rated 3.6. So there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 projects that are in consideration right now. So 8, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. All right, so can you highlight those for us, Chris?
Sure.
So it'd be the management information system improvements, the municipal operations software, the town common electrical, and that was 150.
Yeah. Sorry.
150.
Okay, got that.
75,000. 150.
Sewer connection, do you want that highlighted? Do you want to talk about that separately?
So, the copier replacement, Roger, you want to just talk about the borough school?
Yeah, I'm going to do the borough school hookup. That's not a big deal. I can do that with sewer money.
Okay.
Thank
All right.
you.
All right, so that's off the list. All right, the mower is 30,000, right?
Yeah.
And the grass sweeper is 40,000?
Grass sweepers at 40, yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
I got all 7 highlighted for that.
I think there's 7 now because the eighth one got knocked off. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And the other one is 25,000. So that equates to 150, 75, 150, 40, 30, 40, and 25. So it's $510,000 worth of requests that are still remaining, with a funding source of $312,000.
So town common electrical.
Yep.
I'll put the conduit in. And we'll have to wait, I think, on the fixtures, and we'll have to wait on pulling wire. But I'll put all the risers in for the plug boxes, and I'll put the bases, I'll put a plug box at the base of where every light's supposed to go. What we'll need is, like Jim said, a lumen study for the lighting, to find out where the lighting has to go. And then I'll do the geometry and the plans and everything, and put the conduit in, and I'm gonna replace the panels that we have to take out on the walks and all that. That's not a big deal either. We can do that in-house. And I'll buy the conduit and the plastic fixtures and all that. What I don't have is, I don't have an electrician, I don't have wire, so.
Okay. But it gets the project started, which is key.
So that means, so the labor materials that you can do, subtract that from the 150, and you're saying that the rest can be funded, or?
No, I would say that what it means is that this is the first year this project has come forward, so there's been projects that have been sitting on here for 4 or 5 years in some cases. So I think we probably can say, we'll get the project started this year, and then go for additional funding next year.
Once we get a plan, Jim, then we'll know what the wiring cost is, and then maybe we can figure something on that.
That's just one thought.
I gotta see, we need a plan. But if you can get the lumens done, I can get all the rest of the stuff, you know?
So it gets it started, which is key. So, so if we would do that, that gets the remaining funding down to 360, with available funding of 312,000. So we need to still subtract, I'll say 313. So we gotta come up with $47,000 worth of cuts. Thoughts on that one?
I think the gravestones need to be done right away, because the longer you wait on those, the more damage they're gonna become. I would like to fund that now, so that what can be saved can be saved.
Okay, any other thoughts from the committee?
Is that the first time that's come up before the
Yes, it
Capital
is.
Budget Committee?
It is the first time. I think one of the things that we should consider doing, though, Sue, I don't necessarily disagree with your point, but, there are grant funds available to help with this project, and I think we should look at, there's a way to fund that. We can get from Mass Historical, can actually come up with some money for that. Because I've actually been involved. There's also not just state grants, but there's also private companies or private what are they called? What's the best term to use for that? There's private equities, or not equity, or just companies that provide that funding. 501c3s that provide that funding for those kind of projects.
That was a topic that although it might be on this, I don't know if it was on this list last year. Probably 5 or 6 years ago, the Historic Commission came in front of the selectmen, presented it, and we said the same thing, maybe there's grants out there, so
Yeah.
5 to 6 years ago, this was discussed and it just never went anywhere.
Right.
So it's not a new request, it might be on the list, isn't it?
It's just a capital request, yeah.
Yeah.
Bill?
Yep.
Since 2017, we funded MIS at $100,000 a year.
Yep.
Why don't we just keep it at $100,000 for this year?
That's a good thought,
And
actually.
let's put 50K towards the materials and for the common. Maybe we can get the wires pulled and get some power pedestals in, at least.
The estimate for that was 35. No, it's just the, what? Yes.
Just to pull the electrical was 35.
35, yes, just to have an electrician.
So 50 would actually get us there.
Yeah, 50 would get you there. And
Yeah.
at least you'll get power.
Yeah.
And then next year, hopefully we can come in
Get the
with the
lights.
lights.
And we'll put the boxes in for the lights now, so that when the time comes, all you're gonna have to do is put the pedestals in and pull a short piece of wire, and you're done.
All right, so 35, we would fund, or 50? Are you asking for 50? Okay. All right, so we effectively, we just swapped with that in terms of that cost. You put 50 towards the common, but you took 50 away from MIS.
Right.
So that's just a swap, so we're still short 47,000.
I gotta ask Bill a couple of questions. The copiers look like, to me, that they have to be funded.
I think we'd have some union issues if we start removing copiers out of the building, so they don't
Right.
have the resources to do the job, but.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I just want a confirmation that that's, the case.
Yeah, I thought that would be the case, too. All right, so, what about the grass sweeper, Rob?
The mower is more important than the grass sweeper, but the grass sweeper is still important. It's an MS4 requirement. Like Dave says, we can't keep dumping the grass into the areas around the schools. We gotta pick it up and take it to the compost site. But the mower is more important, because without the mower, I'm down a mower, and I don't
You
have.
can't do
We
that.
can't,
That's an operational necessity.
yeah.
So, if we were to eliminate the sweeper for this year, we could still fund the other items, which are, we could fund just about everything, except for, we're still short $17,000. Thoughts?
In the past, at times, we've given larger appropriations from the free cash. I don't know if you want to do that or not. For
We're
$17,000.
trying not to do that, because that's how we paid for the borough school, was to provide some free cash, towards pay off the debt. Because we still need to do that to keep the gap, to maintain the gap in funding so we're being very careful about that. I know that was one of the major considerations in doing that.
Where can I get 17,000? That's the key.
Is there anything else on the list of the things that we funded that could be reduced? Actually, we only used 150,000, right? In terms of the, instead of 160?
Correct. But it's on the joint public safety building
Yeah,
cameras,
yeah,
it's in the approved column for 150, so it's already factored into the
684?
680.
84, okay.
But it's 160, not 150.
No, it should be 150 according
Yeah.
to Aaron's handout that he handed us this morning.
Yeah, he adjusted it down by $10,000. I mean, the only one item, the only one item that sort of comes to mind is the gravestones. And of the remaining things, other than the copies clearly need to get replaced. You know, so that was the lowest score of all the, no, actually 3.2 was the mower, but we took the mower out, so, we took the sweeper out. That's the lowest score left, right? That's tied with the.
Actually, it's tied with two others. It's
with-
tied
with the
management information systems and
Yeah.
the column.
Well, we already reduced that down by 50,000.
Right.
And we put 50,000 of that towards the common expense. So we've,
I got an idea.
right,
Since MS4 is the requirement for the sweeper, for the grass sweeper, it's, can be construed to be necessary for water supply protection also.
right.
So if we move that down below the line, what does that do?
Nothing, because I took out, we just took out the sweeper, right? I took out the sweeper, so we only need 17,000 left.
No, he's talking about the street sweeper.
Oh, the street sweeper, okay.
That one, okay.
Yeah, that's interesting.
That solves.
That's 55,000, that solves it.
Yep.
That solves it.
I think that's a safe and reasonable request. I hope everybody agrees with that.
Since you're asking, so it's taking it out of the CIP, but it's gonna be paid by the
Water.
Well, just move it to the next line down. It'd be paid for by water receipts.
Water
Right,
enterprise.
right.
Yes.
Because that's needed to be in compliance.
The
with
reason I can
MS4.
do that, Jim, is that the rates are elastic. The water rates are elastic. In other words, I can pump more into the rates and it won't affect the rates, because I know how elastic the rate, we just did the rate study, and I know how elastic it is. And I can afford it without changing the rates.
So here's what I would suggest. If we all agree that that's an acceptable approach, we can put, that's 55,000, we only needed 47 to make it balance. I would recommend that you change the headstones from 25 to 30. Give an extra $5,000 for the headstone project.
Can you do a clean sheet on that, Chris, in a hurry?
Yeah.
Just to make sure we don't overspend the,
Because that has to get done. I mean, it does have to get done. I mean, and
Yeah, I
I think we have not done it, spending money on it for years.
And it's not like it's the first time we ever heard about it.
Right.
So as far as the plan is going right now, I can put back in the first two.
what I was thinking on the sweeper is, I could spend a $55,000.
The first one is
this year on
100,000 instead of
water,
150, though.
And next year, we can put it into a revolving, for the next 4 years.
Yep.
And
Are we gonna put
that
the
can come out of
copies going
capital,
back in?
or
Copies are back in.
more out of water, but I can't take it all out of water. But I think it's reasonable to assume that.
Put 50,000 against
Mowers
the,
going back
budget
in.
is
the
water.
mowers going back in,
Means
the
it will
mowers,
take
the
half
mowers
of
back in,
Grass sweeper staying out,
staying out.
And-
But you gotta put 50,000 towards the common lighting,
which I have.
okay?
What's that total up?
Just working on it right now. And then,
I could probably do it myself.
you got the mower back in, right?
Yeah, all right, I'm still over right now.
How much?
Well, let's go down them, So, it's 100,000, right?
Yeah.
75,
Over.
The 50,000 for the common electrical system. Joint public safety cameras at 150. Computers, hardware, software for schools, 190. Passenger buses, 160. Copiers, 40. Boroughs not being paid for.
Okay.
Right, that's out.
Got that.
1 ton is 60. Street sweeper is 55.
Street sweeper comes out.
Street sweeper comes out, I'm sorry, yeah. Did you take that out?
Yeah.
All right. The mower is 30. The grass sweeper's out.
Dump bodies in it.
The dump body's at 69. Right?
Yeah.
And renovate the booth playground at 85. And what does that come out to be?
I've got $1,034,213.
How can that be?
I got $1.9 million.
How can that be?
Okay, let's check my forms.
Something's wrong there.
I don't think I punched anything in wrong. That's another one now. Let's look at something else.
I've got $1,034,213.
I got $1.9 million,
That's what
213.
I came up with the
I just
number.
added $1.9 million, 213. So we're short, no, we gotta get to 996, right?
Yeah.
So we short 12,513?
Oh, yeah, right.
We still short 13,000.
You added, yeah, that.
We added 5 back in, so that's gonna come back out. So I gotta find $8,000 somewhere.
I'm gonna look and see what else is elastic in here. There's gotta be something else.
You have it there, Chris? You have it? I got $1.9 million. $1.9 million, well, just go ahead, read them off. What do you have?
Okay, so I got 100, I got
Yeah.
75,
Yeah,
I got 50,
yeah.
I got 150.
No, 150 is the joint public safety, right?
Correct.
Okay,
I've got 190,
yeah,
160,
yeah,
40,
yeah,
60,
yeah,
30,
yeah,
69,
yeah,
85, 213,
yeah.
$25,000.
That was the other,
That-
I missed that, the 25,000.
Yeah, so it's 134,
134,
213.
So it is
That's
30.
what I got.
All right, plus 25. So we're still short. We're short by 38,000, right?
Correct.
Fresh out of magic.
Anybody else?
Is the software, all or nothing at
It's
75?
gonna be a huge help. Because the other stuff is not, we don't support it anymore. That's a big problem.
And that's with the elimination of licenses for other software that's currently being used.
Correct.
What is it that we can't fund? We can't, under this, we couldn't fund the graveyards, right?
Right.
And we can't fund another 17,000 besides that.
All right.
What's in here then?
How much are you short?
38,000.
There's more money. I get fuel for the car. That doesn't help us. Put 50,000 in for the car, right?
Yeah. That's true. That's true.
The comments for the whole town, right?
Right. It is.
As long as you can do what you need to do.
Yeah, I can do what I need to do and still have quite a bit left
All right.
over.
So-
More than 50.
We're talking about some creative ideas here, so I don't want, because we're on TV, so I want to make sure that people are aware that we're talking here amongst ourselves. We just have some creative thoughts here. So we do have some mitigation money for the Hanover project, which was, some of that was supposed to be for town-wide consideration. And we have not utilized any of that funding, except we had for permitting, one permitting piece of software that we used. So if we were to use that 38,000 from mitigation, that would actually get us back to square one.
Easily.
Yeah.
As long as we take care of
That
what
project.
we promised the
Yeah.
residents over there.
Yeah.
Which we should be able to. We've had that conversation already internally, and we think we can cover that.
I think we can we can even put a bigger share into the town common. That's a townwide project, the way I look at it.
That's about as good a townwide project as I've seen, actually.
So when the Hanover came in front of the selectmen, there was two pieces to it. One was townwide, some of it went to the
Went to the,
online permitting,
Permitting,
some
yep.
went to Sharon Lawson's.
and then there was 150 specifically for Fisher Street and
Right.
South High.
But that mitigation was to be determined once you got occupancy and working with the neighbors?
Yeah, but now he's at 100% occupancy, and we started working with the neighbors.
So the process with the neighbors has been a couple meetings?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, at least one meeting anyway, so.
Two.
We've had two, that's right, we've had two.
I'm just a little leery about taking that mitigation money.
Well, provided, of course, that he can do what he said he was gonna do.
We can.
We made commitments to doing that. He thinks he can do that.
I wouldn't take it out of the 150 that was specifically for the neighborhood.
Right, it's
But-
for the, but.
Oh, so it's the other piece.
Yeah, it's the other piece,
Yeah.
yeah, it's the other piece. We're not touching the neighborhood commitment piece, it's strictly the one that's
The
townwide.
townwide benefit.
Right.
I think there's something like almost $90,000 left in that.
Right.
And I don't see any, in my mind, I don't see any difference. That's a townwide commitment. And I see no,
If you're gonna do that, why wouldn't you, if you've got that much, why wouldn't you commit to just doing the town common in one shot? Like you said, it's
maybe
one
we
business
could.
town thing.
Without a plan, I can't tell you that, Bill, but
Yeah.
maybe we could. It's possible that I could do it.
There's only $90,000.
Well, there's only 90,000 left in it, though.
I'm guessing.
Just chipping in
I'm guessing, because I don't have access to the actual finance that came out of that prior.
Yeah, we used about, maybe 80,000. I think it was 60 or 70,000.
I don't know.
It was 60,000.
I don't have access to the
It was
numbers.
90,000 that's left,
So
I think.
if for now, we just took the 38,000 out to make up the difference to keep 50 in for the
Right.
common,
Right.
balance this.
Yeah.
Then you said you could do some of the work, and then if it turns out, once you see the
Mm-hmm.
cost, that there is additional monies, maybe we could get the lamp posts this year instead
Maybe.
of waiting, and if not, we can't, then
If
it's
the
next
lamp
year.
posts are around in the $30,000 or $40,000 range, it might be feasible to do them.
But we don't know that
Right.
until we do further analysis of that.
But I'm going to suggest that we process that way, because we owe ourselves to do a plan. We have to have a plan of what's going to be done on the common, and then we can price off the plan
It's 38,000.
and see
would
what
have to be
can really
funded
be
from
achieved.
mitigation.
We did start that. We did meet up there one day with Dave and Tony and what we had for a plan, and I mean, it's not finalized, but we did start doing that, so it shouldn't be that hard to finish.
I think he took
How does the
takeoffs already.
mitigation money get spent? Is that, how, what kind of approval?
Board of Selectmen.
Board of Selectmen.
Only?
Right.
So someone could come back to you, as you just said, halfway through the year, and you could say, okay, now we want to spend that money to finish the contract.
Exactly.
Well, as it is right now, Bill, we're working on a plan to address the needs in the neighborhood.
Right, but that's a different set of money. I'm saying.
Well, there's 150, but, you know, the remaining funding was available to help offset that cost as well. So if it went over 150,000, we were gonna use that to help, help with the neighborhood even further. But I do agree with Roger that we think we can actually do that with the fund. I think if we took 40,000 out of it, he still can do what he needs to do.
If you just give me the 150, I'll still have money left over out of that for the neighborhood, because I'm gonna do the roads and the berms, and maybe a sidewalk if I can get around the tree issue.
Right.
So for the CIP portion, we should take the money out of the town common.
Yeah, just take
Take
all the.
it out of here.
Take it out of there.
With the intent of using.
With the intent of
the
using
mitigation
the
money.
other part of the mitigation money to do all the common work, as much as we can do.
Out of the mitigation.
Yes.
I guess my only point, from a technical point, this committee is still supposed to vote as a CIP item to do that work.
Yes.
So that's why I'm saying you'd have to reconvene at a later time.
We could vote to do it for zero funding.
Well, it's not zero fund, you're using mitigation.
Well, just one other thought here. I realize we're on TV, by the way. People, I think I'm talking to the wind out here, because you guys are sitting in the back of the room here. So, but there are other people in the room, folks, just so you know that. But we're all putting our heads together, which is great. I'm really appreciative of the thoughts. But I think what we could do is not overly complicate this. Take the 38,000 for mitigation. We can always revisit later, if there's additional needs to try and fund that. To balance the request, that 38,000 would still be subject to approval by the Board of Selectmen, because the Selectmen still have to vote that. In fact, the entire plan is subject to the Selectmen approval anyway.
Sure. And town meeting.
Well,
And town
yeah.
meeting.
So isn't it just cleaner then to take the 50,000 off of what you're funding right now and say that 50,000 is effectively going to have to be voted by the Board of Selectmen?
One time.
You as a group commit to the fact that you want it to be done under a CIP without the dollar specific.
Right.
But the Board of Selectmen would then have the authority to then
Well,
move it forward.
Well, ultimately, the Board of Selectmen has to approve the plan anyways before it goes to the AdCom. All right, so what we'll do is we'll just list it as a funding source, and then they can approve it all at once.
But I guess that's my point. Technically, what you're saying is you're using mitigation money, which is not a town vote.
Right, it's a Selectmen's vote.
Right, so it never has to go beyond Board of Selectmen.
And it doesn't have to be on the CIP.
Right.
Well, it does have to be on the CIP because it's over 25,000.
Right. So we just list that as a funding source. And so the 50,000 would be mitigation from the Hanover project. And then just disregard the 38,000 altogether, just, that would leave essentially $12,000 to the plus.
Yeah.
All right? Is everybody clear on that point, at this point? We would actually have $12,000 left over.
Does anybody have a problem with that that's here? I mean,
Not a problem, just clarification. So with the effort that the DPW is gonna do, plus the 50,000 that is voted contingent upon selectmen from the mitigation on the second half of the Hanover money.
or more.
Or more.
Or more.
So does that get the conduits, the light poles?
That gets the conduits.
Not the light poles.
We don't know about the light poles.
So I think the only point I want to make to Roger's original comment, Roger can save us a lot of money as far as the trenching and stuff like that, but you still need to put those pre-formed bases in when he's doing that. You don't want to have 6,000 boxes out there that you're tying into later. So if that 50,000, which I know it could fund all the bases being put in at the same time you're putting the conduit in, then the only thing you got left to do is see how
With the
much-
pedestals themselves,
Right.
yeah.
Because that will cover the electrician, which you don't have.
Right.
To pull
Right.
it all, and then we'll just be trying to figure out, do we have the money for the lamp posts, and we may or we may not, and if we don't this year, then they wait till next year.
The only problem, because this is going back to the discussions with Dave, nobody knows where all the wires are right now. So when you're trenching it, you are going to break.
No
wires.
question.
No
So
question.
you're gonna have light poles that may or may not work. There's gonna be extra cost to fix those while you're putting a brand-new base next to it.
But I consider that to be part of what the cost is anyway, Jim, you know?
So, in the interest of time here, so what we'll do is go back and we'll just list the 50,000 for funding, as a funding source from mitigation.
Okay.
All right,
All right,
so,
so that, I've got that in a separate file, so I'm gonna have to go and amend that file to match with what you
All right.
did here, all right?
but, so let's go through it just, and then because the committee has to vote to approve this overall. All right, so I'll list them. and-
Before you do that, Bill, if the mitigation funding is for a townwide project,
Yep.
okay, why does it need to be here?
Because it's over $50,000. It's over $25,000. So you have to put it, you just have to list the fund as a separate funding source. But it has to go through capital. Okay, that's why. Okay.
Yep.
All right, anybody else? All right, so let's go through them one by one, okay, and we'll go to list them. The ones that are gonna get funded are the management information systems at $100,000. The municipal operations software, People GIS, $75,000. The municipal buildings, town common electrical system upgrades, $50,000. The joint public safety security cameras for public buildings, $150,000. The school computers, hardware, software, network upgrades, $190,000. The quantity, two 77 passenger school bus replacements at $160,000. The 4 copiers replacements at $40,000. The 1-ton 3,500 four-wheel drive pickup with plow replacement, $60,000. The mower at $30,000. The dump body, and these are all public works items, $69,000. The recreation renovate booth playground, $85,000, $85,213. The restoration of gravestones in towns, 6 cemeteries, $25,000. And just for the record, the funding sources for all of those items are free cash, with the exception of the town common electrical system, which is the mitigation fund from the Hanover project, subject to further approval by the Board of Selectmen.
And the first year payment on the street sweeper moves into water revenue.
Right, I'm gonna get to that, so we'll get this, so that moves down, okay? So, so we will have to change the water revenue accounts, or the water funding.
Revenue funding as well, yeah.
Funding, okay? So the street sweeper, 5-year rent-to-own, will be funded at $55,000. The water system improvements, $200,000. The water well replacement, wasn't replacement, but rehabilitation is $340,000. The water meters is $200,000. That wasn't listed, Chris, but I just not sure why it wasn't listed as funding, but the parallel track tank design to $80,000. Replacement of process logic controllers at plant, $190,000. The box van.
209.
I'm sorry, I stand corrected, 209. The box van was $190,000. Excuse me. The utility truck, $120,000. The into sewer now, inflow and infiltration study, $100,000. The replace the town engineer's vehicle, $40,000. The SCADA system upgrade is $100,000. And under total enterprise, that's looking at roads, street reconstruction, $238,777. Chapter 90, $650,000. And that leaves a grand total of what, Chris? With the
$3,556,990.
Okay. That includes the $50,000 for the common?
Correct.
And includes the
$25,000 for the cemeteries.
cemeteries. And so grand total again is what, 3 million?
$3,556,990.
So does the 55,000 for the street sweeper go there too?
Was that included in that?
Yes. Yeah, it's in the water total here.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Check my formula correct. Yeah.
It's, is it listed, where is it listed? I didn't see
So
it.
I'm sorry, it's at the bottom of the water requests, so underneath the utility trucks.
You might want to list that as water now as opposed to public works.
Absolutely.
All right? Okay, very good. I think that's it. So I will accept that as a motion. And do I have a second?
I'll second.
All right, all those in favor?
Under discussion.
Under discussion?
I just want to be clear that the money for the common, well, we're all supportive of it. It has to be available after all the work that's been promised the residents in the neighborhood is taken care of, so I would.
But I think you do that at the selectmen's meeting.
I understand.
But I also think that.
I understand. But I just want.
But we're committing to it here as well, so
Right,
that's
I want everybody
that's
to
a
be
fair
clear
point.
that.
That's a fair point.
Not until that work is completed to the satisfaction of the residents that the work's been promised, will that money be available to be used elsewhere.
Right.
The mitigation portion.
And based
for
upon
townwide.
the input Roger has given us, he believes that will be the case. Right? Okay. All right, so there's a motion, and is there a second? And there is a second, and so all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Okay. All right, is there any further business before this committee? All right, motion to adjourn?
Second.
All's in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.